Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode, where we're covering chapters 25 through 28 of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. But before we begin this episode, please listen closely to our content warning. While we're focusing today's discussion on chapters 25 through 28 and book 1, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing lore, and other insights across the series. So yes, these episodes are spoiler central for the whole ACOTAR series. These ACOTAR deep dives do not, however, include spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series. And also, there's no Maas vs. Madness for today's episode.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why Rhys "This is the most fun I've had in ages" hits way harder on a reread, then please go finish the series. We will be here when you're done.
Next, of course, we have to say, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, folks, this podcast is rated R.
We get our one and only sex scene in this book. And if you think we're going to analyze every single moment of this man, bear, pig, bang, bang, bangity bang, you'd be correct. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
Last thing before we jump into our ACOTAR Deep Dive episode 5.
If you love Fantasy Fangirls and you are loving this ACOTAR journey, if you want more content, more community connection, even more events, and a book club, discounted merch, early access to ad-free episodes, and more, please check out our Patreon. We have 2 membership tiers, the Valkyries for $5 a month and the High Fae for $10 a month.
Join the Patreon party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in our show notes or YouTube caption, depending where you're tuning in right now. And really and truly, thank you so much for supporting the show, for supporting Nicole and I. It means the absolute world as we make this our livelihood, and it's all because of you. Thank you.
And now it is time for the Spring Court Summer Frat Party. Dun 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 dun. That's the Jellyfish Jam song from SpongeBob SquarePants.
I was like, wow, what is this theme music? Well, friends, Nicole's going to open up this discussion with a summary of what happens in chapters 25 through 28. So gather round, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 25. Feyre wakes up to maypoles, fiddling, and flowers galore. It's a summer solstice party. It also turns out that this is a party that Feyre got an invite to.
Huzzah!
Feyre, dolled up and looking positively Fae, rolls up to this shindig. But Lucien, being ever the protector, warns her not to drink the fairy wine. This will shock everyone, though. Feyre does indeed drink it. But this is no frat party jungle juice. As fireworks set off inside her, she begins to dance to the music, all while Lucien plays drunk babysitter, helping her avoid running into things. This sounds like the frat party I'm familiar with. But who's that fiddle player? It's a rootin' scootin' Timmy Tam who's having the fiddle solo of his life. After Feyre dances and dances like she's the dance soloist and fiddler on the roof, Tamlin sets the fiddle down to take Feyre to the meadow and view the Will-o'-the-Wisps, and has a much more private dance party. And then Tamlin and Feyre finally share their first kiss, where Feyre's response is, "That's it." Not the response you want, Timmy Tam. But these two watch the sunrise together, and Feyre remarks how it is the happiest moment of her human life. Give it a few hundred pages. Feyre, chapter 26. The next day, the three are in the dining room. Hope you enjoyed that, because that's the last time we'll be saying that on this podcast for this book. The 3 party animals are eating breakfast and teasing each other about their previous night's whereabouts. But Lucien, ready to dump a bucket of winter cold water all over them, tells Tamlin that they received a letter from the Winter Court and that the Blight took out 24 younglings, breaking into their minds and killing them. Their morning is quickly cut off, though, because Tamlin starts snarling at the front door. "Down, boy!" Tamlin tells Lucien to hide Feyre and glamours her, making her invisible to this new threat. And who enters but the tall, night-kissed, beautiful stranger who saved her on Calamai? Welcome back to the chat, Rhysand! This swaggering high fae male begins taunting Tamlin about doing nothing over the past 49 years to save the Spring Court. Well... But Lucien fights back, seems appropriate, spitting at Rhys that he's Amarantha's whore, reprimanding little Lucien. Rhys asks if that's any way to speak to a High Lord of Prythian. Record scratch! High Lord? Yep, Fae-vorite meet the High Lord of the Night Court. Tamlin tells Rhys to leave it alone because he'll see him soon enough, and Rhysand goes to leave. But Rhys has a record scratch moment of his own, noticing there's a third spot set up at the table. Taking away the glamour, Rhysand stares at his future mate with fury and a hint of something else. Lucien tells Rhys that Fae-vorite is his betrothed, and Rhys is like, hold my beer, little Lucien, and begins to taunt Fae-vorite, taking control of her mind and reading every delicious thought she's had about Tamlin. Not a good look for our bat boy. Tamlin tells Rhys to let her go, and Rhysand, seeing the opportunity, makes Tamlin and Lucien get on their knees and beg. Turning to leave, Rhys selfishly has one more question. What's your name, love? Fae-vorite responds with the first name she can think of, Claire. Better. Womp womp. And Rhysand vanishes, leaving our trio in stunned silence. Chapter 27. In bed, Fae-vorite is unable to sleep, both from wondering about this Amarantha person and also from the absolute havoc that Tamlin is causing downstairs. Maybe that's why we're never in the dining room again, because I'm pretty sure there's no dining room left. Tamlin comes in and he's got some bad news. He's sending Fae-vorite home. Fae-vorite is shooketh. She was just starting to settle into the Spring Court vibes. When she protests, he tells her that there's dangers in Prythian that would hurt her and he cannot keep her safe. Fae-vorite's still not convinced though, continues to fight against Tamlin's words, asking how long she'll be away. Tamlin concedes, not forever. Pinocchio, your nose is growing. And even though Fae-vorite knows it's a lie, she begins kissing him, pulling him onto the bed, and bang, bang, bangity bang. I said bang, bang, bangity bang. They fall asleep and waking back up. Bang, bang, bangity bang. I said bang, bang, bangity bang. One more time. Savor this moment because it'll be a while before I say those words again. Finally, Tamlin's like, woman, I need to sleep. Tamlin admits that he's sending her away tomorrow. This is not the Annie song I signed up for. Falling asleep in each other's arms, Tamlin breathes onto Fae-vorite's neck that he loves her, thorns and all. But don't worry, he's gone the next day when she wakes up. Chapter 28. The next morning, Alice dresses Fae-vorite in the frittiest of human outfits. Lucien sees Fae-vorite out, and not one for a heartfelt goodbye. He bids her farewell with a, I thought you were smarter than this. Woof. Tamlin joins the goodbye train, helping her into the carriage and telling her that he will see her again and that he loves her. And Fae-vorite, looking into his eyes, has the I love you ready for him. It's on the tip of her tongue. But she holds back. A while later, after a nippity nap, she's back in the human realm, coming face to face with her huge house and her sisters, who, after not even recognizing her, are shocked to see Fae-vorite, who was supposed to be with their long-lost aunt, assuming that aunt now to be dead and that she left Fae-vorite her whole fortune. Fae-vorite realizes with a heavy heart that this is all Timmy Tam's doing, and how much he's been a distant sugar daddy to her whole family. Elaine fills in some gaps for Fae-vorite, though. A stranger showed up and asked their father to invest for him and gave him a huge sign-on bonus. Where is this in corporate life? Oh, and all of those ships were found with their whole fortune on it. Basically, they've been jamming to ABBA's Money, Money, Money for months now. Fae-vorite, joining back with her family, has only one thought rippling through her mind, though. Stay with the High Lord, human. Damn. Maybe she should have told Timmy Tam she loves him after all.
Nicole, I think that might be one of my favorite Inner Circle debriefs you've done yet.
Really? That means a lot because I was not vibing it this morning. I did a lot of edits, so thank you.
Thank you so much, as always, for your Inner Circle debrief. And as delicious as that summer solstice fairy wine sounds, you know what you can also drink and it's a whole lot better for you? AG1. I first gave AG1 a try because my poor tummy needed digestive support. Like, really. And oh my goodness, since drinking AG1 daily, I've felt such a noticeable improvement in my gut health, and it extends into feeling better all around every single day.
That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continually refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health. We love innovation here, friends.
I love that every scoop includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for my gut support. I've converted my husband, who is now obsessed too. He says that he has more energy, feels less stressed, and I'm seriously not joking. He comments almost every single day how much he loves his AG1 drink. He seriously won't travel without his AG1 travel packs either. Like, when I say he's converted, he's really converted. It's now simply ingrained in our chaotic mornings with 2 kids under 2. I still can't believe how easily it fits into our mornings to make the whole day better.
And that's why we are so excited that AG1 is sponsoring today's episode. If you want to take ownership over your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/FFG. That's drinkag1.com/FFG. Check it out.
All right, friends, it's time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, foreshadowing, theories, and oh, so much more.
2 holiday episodes in a row. Let's kick it off with the summer solstice celebration. So we learned that the main celebration used to be in the summer court, but now they have one here in the spring court because everyone in the summer court is not there anymore.
On the longest day of the year, it's one big party where everyone celebrates when the sun outshines the night. It's a time for all fairies to relax, let down their hair, and simply enjoy and celebrate being fairies, not high fae or fairy, just everyone together singing Kumbaya.
How delightful. Last episode, we discussed that Calamai / the Great Rite celebration is in each court. Not Calamai specifically, but some kind of Great Rite. And I'm guessing that the summer solstice would be the one for normally the summer court. Honestly, I would love to go to this. Like, I'm already a member. I'm a proud member of the summer court. That is the place where I would immediately run off to. I would love to see what kind of party this would be like.
I imagine it's like one gigantic epic beach party, like with the extra large beach balls that bounce among everyone, you know, never touching the sand. And there's a boy band on stage and the food is magically protected from the sand getting all in it. I want to go to this party.
You know that scene in the Princess Diaries of the beach party?
That's exactly what I was thinking of too.
Like Mandy Moore's on stage jamming. Take me there now.
That's what you thought of too. I see. That's exactly what I thought of. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
The thing is, that's not even like an epic beach party. That's just like a high schooler party.
I could see that as the summer court. Like Tarquin's the youngest High Lord. I could see it kind of being like a little high school element. Or like a frat party, like I mentioned earlier.
Like I think of like an Ibiza, like Ibiza, the island where it's like known as a party island. Like that is also, I have not been to one. I've actually been to Ibiza, but I have not been to a beach party there. I was a little too young.
I feel like there would be like yacht, like it'd be very Monaco. Like there'd be like yachts partying in the bay.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Wow, we're getting really off topic.
Well, apparently we need to go there right now.
I am going to Monaco in the fall for my honeymoon. I'm so excited. I will not be on a yacht though. I wish I was that cool. I will not be on a yacht unless I convince someone to let me on theirs. Anyway.
What were we talking about?
I don't remember. Thank God for outlines. So it is mentioned that Tamlin has been out for an overnight patrol. We'll say it's not really patrol. He's like called away around the border. But when he comes back, he's like completely unscathed. It's very mysterious what he's being called out for. But this is also right after the head is found in the garden courtesy of High Lord Rhysand, High Lord of the Night Court. What do you think Tamlin went off to do that left him just like not even unscathed, but unbothered, it seems like?
I really hadn't thought of it that way. I didn't think about there being a correlation between the head and Tamlin's departure. I just assumed he went off because Amarantha's letting more monsters loose as a way to taunt him about the approaching deadline, just as we've already kind of known there. So I definitely don't think it had anything specifically to do with Rhys, but I have wondered if there was a specific cause for it to be overnight. So maybe it's just a way of emphasizing things are getting worse and Feyre is worried about him?
That makes a lot of sense. I love that it's not there for like, oh, Tamlin's called away on a secret mission. It's instead to emphasize like, oh, shit's getting worse because we're getting closer to the deadline. That makes so much more sense to me.
And Nicole, you and Feyre with your purring. Tamlin says that she looks lovely and his soft tone makes her just want to purr.
Listen, purring is a vibe and I will stand by it. There is nothing more satisfying than just going.
I love it because like my mouth literally cannot do that. I have never been able to roll my R's. And so I just, it's like, okay, Nicole, now purr.
I do have, because someone asked for the sound to be clipped. I do have a purr clipped on my computer, just one purr. It's like 0.2 milliseconds, but it's a purr that's there nonetheless.
Sounds like we need a social media audio of that. Anyway, can you believe that Tamlin's "your hair is clean" compliment was only 4 episodes ago? Our Timmy Tam has come so far. I do believe the summer solstice is Tamlin's peak in this book and most certainly in the rest of the series because book 1 is definitely his peak overall. Like I think we're all in agreement with that. And it really is just such a lovely chapter as their love and happiness is on full display, simply shining through these pages where you can't help but smile. Like again, no matter what you end up thinking about Tamlin, like this is a shining moment and we're going to appreciate that. Too bad it's also the last time that they'll both be truly happy together before everything just goes to hell.
Womp.
Oh yeah, starting as early as Rhys interrupting their lunch the next day and bringing Tamlin back to reality, and how dangerous all this is for Feyre, where she's within Amarantha's grasp. But like, okay, we're not there yet. We're we're going to focus on summer solstice and bask in the wonderfulness that it is.
On that note, though, I do have a note for Tamlin. And that is, he's leading her to this party. He has her on his arm, like they are linked. It seems like he is her date to this event, for lack of a better term. And then Feyre goes off to get some food and he disappears to go like play his fiddle and doesn't tell her where he's going. To be fair, Feyre does not mind the solitude. She even says that she's okay just being by the food table. And honestly, that is same girl, same. If I'm ever at a party, I'm standing by the food. That's just my MO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
if there's a cheese board there, like I am on that cheese board.
Oh, I love that so much. We're fun at Christmas time. Let's just say that. But also he just like left her with a bunch of strangers. Like, bro, what the fuck?
Well, and then it's funny because Feyre, she is drawing a little attention with her presence at the High Lord's side. Like you said, like they're coming to this together. And it causes Tamlin to get into his protective mode, and he gives a warning growl to make them all mind their business. And then that's when he immediately pieces out to go play the fiddle. I guess it checks out. He marked his territory and essentially warned them not to fuck with Feyre before he left. But still, there's that language where Feyre thinks how she's trying her best not to look like she's just some human plaything of his.
Well, that's indeed some foreshadowing, because she will become a human plaything for a different High Lord in just a matter of chapters. But at least that human plaything... No, I can't even defend it. It's a bad look for Rhys. It's a really bad look for Rhys.
We're going to move.
That's going to be a lot of L's for our guy. But on this note, Feyre is about to defy Lucien and drink the wine. But she thinks, as she's looking around, she thinks, where's my High Lord? Something along those lines. But she says the word, my High Lord. This is the first time she's thought anything like this. Remember, back in chapter 14, the Suriel says his human woman. She's been subconsciously thinking, and she thinks about this throughout the rest of the book, she's subconsciously been thinking of herself as his property since that encounter with the Suriel. This is the first time she's looking at him as if she has, I'm not going to say ownership by any means, but just as like you would say, this is my boyfriend or this is my partner. It's very much along those same lines for Feyre.
It's also a sign that she's found her home. She's found her people and a male who she respects and is loyal to. She's still maybe self-conscious that she looks like his human plaything, but she's gaining confidence in what they truly share together, as unequal as that might still be.
Remember, he left her without saying a fucking word. I'm just gonna say, like, that is, I'm like so mad for Feyre. I know she's not mad about it. I'm mad for her. Like, that would piss me off so much. But Feyre chugging not one, but 2 glasses of fairy wine, because damn girl, go big or go home.
Yeah, Feyre. Yeah, girl.
This is like there's Jello shots at the party and you just go and like, you know, put as many as you can on your hand and just like take one after the other, and then that's the end of your night. Anyway, I've never done that before.
I was gonna say, that's very specific.
Listen, college was a fun time. And I just love this line so much from Feyre. Quote, "The sky was an eddy of molten amethyst, sapphire, and ruby, all bleeding into a final pool of onyx. I wanted to swim in it, wanted to bathe in it, and feel the stars twinkling beneath my fingers." First off, this is just a beautiful description of how she's always looking through the world through a painter's lens. This is another call to the stars and the onyx, aka to the night, and how it is always beckoning and always attractive to her.
And it's also important to note, she's a merchant's daughter who is familiar with all of these beautiful jewels that she was just listing. So I love how she describes the world through that lens as well.
I do want to put a little side note, and this maybe just like might be a thing for you and I to explore, Lex. Can we make fairy wine? Like, what is this? Do you put pop rocks in it? Like, I need to have this. This looks so good.
I'm not gonna lie, I think there might be a sprinkle of ecstasy in the recipe.
Maybe we don't make that.
But seriously, I absolutely love these little descriptions of the fairy wine. You really feel like you're experiencing the summer solstice right alongside Feyre. It smells like summer is spent lying in the grass and bathing in cool pools. Like, wow, how lovely. And the fairy liberates her from bonds she didn't know existed. It feels like a million fireworks exploding inside of her and filling her veins with starlight. Again, there's that starlight language describing something so blissfully happy for her. Totally separate side note, I appreciate these little glimpses of memories our characters have shared over the weeks, where we learn here that Lucien tricked Feyre into eating hallucination witch berries, and it made Tamlin chuck him into a reflection pool. Like, I want to see that. Anyway, it paints such a carefree picture of these three and their outings, offering a glimpse into the fun and the friendship that they've built up together and shared. Again, it's a little sad to realize these memories are the happiest at least Tamlin and Lucien will experience for a long time. And it's also very sad to think that while they're literally frolicking through the flowers, everybody else is imprisoned under the mountain. Like, I've been thinking a lot more about that, and it's like, oh, but I mean, hey, gotta be happy somehow, right?
I want to also point out that the Spring Court has a reflection pool. We will also see one of those in the Dawn Court during the High Lord meeting of ACOTAR, in which Fae-vorite is literally like, Rhys, can we get one of I want one. Like, can we get one of these installed? And I just love seeing that little connection between the two high courts.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. This summer solstice is a fantastic way of showing how much Fae-vorite has come into her own here in Prythian. Yes, she's drunk, but she's so full of love and freedom among these fairies. She even thinks as she watches them dance, quote, "It was like they were as loose as I was, free. I loved them for it." She's come such a long way in her opinions about fairies over these months. We can't forget how this story started, where she killed one because she thought maybe it was a fairy. Her time here in the Spring Court is also such a perfect introduction to Prythian, to magic and fairies before she experiences more of the world, gets closer with more powerful fae. Her introduction to these magical lands, aka most of this book, is necessary for her overall journey. It would be way too jarring for her to get thrown straight into Valaris and the Inner Circle.
I also love that you pulled out that line because there is that one word, free. They're technically not free. Everyone has a mask attached to their face. They know that the 49 years are about to be up in just a matter of days. The irony here that they're all dancing as if they're totally free. They know that this is their last summer solstice. I guarantee you that there is some blackout drinking. There is some wild and crazy partying tonight. And there's just this like element of really leaning into that freedom because this is their last hurrah before they go under Amarantha's full control.
Yes, and at the same time, you'd think that they all are aware of like what is happening, and they see her and Tamlin, and it's like, where is the crab singing "Kiss the Girl" here? Like, come on. Like, everybody needs to work a little bit harder here. I know that they don't need it. Like, you know, she and Tamlin end up having their moment, and they do kiss, but come on.
All I see is Lucien in the Will-o'-the-Wisp, like peeking out, being like, "Kiss the girl." He's got the red hair and everything.
Speaking of Lucien, poor Lucien.
Poor Lucien.
I feel like we say that a lot, but poor Lucien. And he's trying to be a good friend and emissary by watching out for Fae-vorite, and she's the fun drunk girl at the party who just won't listen to him.
Literally, Fae-vorite's like, "You stop, Lucien." And she like drinks another glass of wine. Like, she is such a vibe.
She and Violet would get along well.
She would, yeah.
And as much as we can joke about Lucien's attempts to look out for her best interests, this is also another example of how he's in Tamlin's employment first and foremost. He even says, "Tamlin will gut me." And while we know he's exaggerating, I'm guessing there have been several of these kind of threats and warnings that cause Lucien to be a little bit fearful of losing control over Fae-vorite. He's scared of Tamlin's reaction when Fae-vorite drunkenly comes across him, but then of course Tam's like, "Nah man, she's fine." And Lucien's like, "Well then fuck you all for me caring." And then he gets out ASAP because he doesn't want to babysit drunk Fae-vorite.
Now, this might be the opposite of Claw Watch because Fae-vorite comes face to face with this super sweaty hair slicked with sweat. I can't say that word enough. Tamlin is sweaty. Little fiddle boy, Tamlin, which I do want to pause real quick before we get fully into Claw Watch. Because Lexi, would you find, and this has like become a huge joke on the internet, is Tamlin like hardcore fiddling? Do you find this attractive? Like if a guy was playing a fiddle at you like this, would you be like,
First of all, I love that it's playing the fiddle at.
There's no other way to phrase that.
I will say, seeing a man I like go hard at a musical instrument he's really skilled at, in that sense, yes, I would find that attractive.
Yeah.
However, I also love how fitting it is that it's Tamlin playing the fiddle. Like, how much more opposite of Rhys can you get here? Like, again, nothing against the fiddle. Nothing is against the fiddle.
Yeah.
It's just not the first instrument I think of when I think of a sexy man seducing me with music.
All I can think about is Ken on the beach, like, is it Wonderwall or whatever he's playing at Barbie? And there's all the Kens just like on loop playing the song.
I mean, Tamlin does end up getting down on his knees in front of her and just like rocks out with a fiddle solo. And I can just picture all of this so vividly, and I'm just like die laughing. And also because of that viral TikTok with the fiddle version of Get Low, and now that's all I think of with this scene. Like that is the only song that he is playing is Get Low.
Oh my god, shouts to our ACOTAR playlist that has not one but 3 fiddle songs back to back to back, and one of them Jake knows every single word to.
I mean, it's It's a well-known song. Like
The Devil Went Down to Georgia. I had never heard it before I listened to the podcast, or before I listened to the playlist.
that is a you problem. That's a very well-known song.
Love you too, sis. Thanks. So back to Claw Watch. Feyre notices that Tamlin is playing the fiddle as hard as he can. Again, he is coaxed to a sweat, this guy. And he tells Feyre to dance, which I also love that he's not like, ooh, continue dancing. He's like, dance, Feyre. Like, he just like, it's like very like sing to me, my angel of music style. But she notices as she's, drunk as shit on fairy wine, that there is no sign of his claws. We always think of this night as one of Feyre's happiest memories, but I would wager that this is also one of Timmy Tam's. Remember, Tamlin never wanted to be High Lord. This position comes with many responsibilities, many of which we've seen make his claws punch out and literally sometimes bitch slap his own face when he has to deal with them. Playing the fiddle was truly one of the only things that Tamlin is good at, other than killing. He admits that earlier in the book. It makes sense that this is one of his happiest moments. He's playing this instrument, something that he chose to become a master at, rather than something that was chosen for him. So as much shit as we give Tamlin for playing the fiddle on the internet, it is beautiful and so nice to see him happy and doing something that he loves to do as well.
And to see how much joy his fiddling brings Feyre.
I bet he's good with those fingers on the fiddle.
I bet he is. I bet he's imagined a night like this forever, even before the curse. They're just being free and basking in each other, and it's really sweet. They both needed this celebration to simply enjoy themselves and each other. Summer solstice isn't a turning point, but it is a solidifier that Feyre wants to be here, that she feels like she belongs among these fairies, that she can let down her guard fully with Tamlin, that she can dance and laugh and love and experience all of this, just again, freely. We're using that term again. She needs to have this climactic moment to understand how fulfilling life can feel, so later she knows what she's fighting for.
Oh, that was so beautiful, Lexi. That was gorgeous. Oh,
thank you.
You're welcome. That was so good.
This feeling of pure bliss and happiness only magnifies when Tamlin shows Feyre the field where the will-o'-the-wisps are dancing, which, wow, Tamlin, I'm very impressed with you. A++++ on your flirting efforts. Like, no, actually tonight, you might be teaching the class. You're that good.
Whoa. I love that when she's dancing, he's like, I want, like, come with me. And she's like, I'm dancing, Tamlin. Like, let me dance. But he leans into her and he says, I want to show you something better. 10 out of 10 line, Tamlin.
Yes.
Well done. Well done, sir.
And then privately dancing with the woman you love in a meadow of dancing, singing spirits of air and light. They're holding each other. He's simply saying her name because he loves saying it. That's another part I loved. Like, where did this hopeless romantic come from?
So I had a shower thought this morning, actually, about this. You know how when let's say you're at a party and you look hot. You're wearing a great outfit. Your hair's cooperating. The makeup is makeuping that day. And when you flirt, you're like, who is this feral beast that's coming out of me? Like, there's just this extra element of confidence. But then when this is actually a personal example. When Brett and I were on our first date, I had my hair wet from a shower. It was braided back. I had my glasses on. I had no makeup. I was in a giant flannel. Let's just say I was not looking and feeling my best because I didn't know it was a date. And when I say I have never been a more terrible flirter in my life, the fact that I bagged this man and was able to marry him is honestly shocking given my level of talent of flirting that night. This goes to show that when you're not feeling your best, tends to be your confidence is maybe not in the same alignment with the flirting that you want to be able to have. Tamlin has been in a mask for 50 years that he hates desperately. So I also think that his lack of flirting well-doneness up until this point also might be in correlation with the fact that he's not been feeling his most confident. I think that there's many things here, but this might be an element at play. So I think the mask might be a little bit to blame for his flirting not feeling great until he feels so comfortable with Feyre where he's able to whisper into her drunk ass ear, I want to show you something better.
Well, and that was Amarantha's intention too. Like, Bingo. She put that mask on him so it would be more difficult for him and this human woman to fall in love.
Bingo.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived. Beauty and the Beast kiss. Hallelujah. The curse will be broken soon. They love each other. They only have to say it. We can feel it all building up to the big moment. Right? Never mind. I'm going to rip into them both shortly for later decisions. But right now, let's give these two lovebirds a big huzzah, huzzah, huzzah on honestly, how happy they are from this whole evening deserves a huzzah. Like, again, I'm going to love on them right now.
Well, I'm going to splash some cold water on that love, because as satisfying as this kiss is, this is another moment of showcasing Tamlin and his indecisiveness. He's looking at Feyre with an expression caught between a smile and a wince, not what you want, and says, I'm thinking I might kiss you. To which Feyre is the one who says, then do it. And then he does this like super soft, testing the waters kiss. And Feyre says, that's it? Then she pulls him down into this passionate kiss. He is not showcasing the most take initiative kind of, vibe. And to be fair, this is not like a huge dig at Tamlin, because yes, consent is important, and him asking, basically asking, can I kiss you? But it does showcase that he's not ever one to take the initiative. He normally has other people either take the initiative for him or give him the green light for him to be able to do something like that.
When did I become the hopeless romantic between the two of us? Like, wow.
Give me a minute, because we got a sex scene coming up.
We also get another beautiful full circle moment here when Feyre recalls when her father told her she should let her sisters imagine a better life, a better world, to which she said there's no such thing. We remember that conversation happened the day she returned from the woods after killing Andrys and the doe. She couldn't believe that such happiness or hope was even possible until now. And this scene honestly makes me want to tear up, because I want to reach through the pages and just hug Feyre as she heals right before us. Even if they don't last long and there's a lot of issues coming up, at least she and Tamlin had this. Like I've said before, we might have some strong feelings about an ex, but often there were those really happy memories where we felt alive and whole because of them. And just because it doesn't last doesn't mean it doesn't matter or should be washed away. It helps us understand the good in the world and what kind of happiness can be achieved, and that there is that spark within ourselves to feel and experience this strongly, this purely, this fully. Like I said a few minutes ago, she needs to know that love and happiness like this are possible so that she can fight for it when she goes under the mountain. I'll be honest, a few of my fondest and most impactful memories in life were with exes who I don't ever want to speak to anymore. But those experiences still happened to me, and they still hold importance in my overall life story and who I've become as a person. And hindsight might be 20/20, but I'm just so happy for Feyre and yes, Tamlin on summer solstice.
It's so easy to look back at memories and think of them as black and white, good or bad. One of the things that I love about looking at this book through the lens that we are, at least, is we're looking at it through that gray lens. It's not always good or always bad. It is that gray area because these are very gray characters. And it's moments like this, especially that you're highlighting here, Lex, that create such an internal struggle with Feyre through the first half, if not half plus, of ACOMAF. She feels so guilty because of moments like this where things were just so good. She feels like she's moving on too fast and she's not giving Tamlin's good moments their due diligence. She feels like she's the bad person because she is moving on and these moments are still lingering in her mind. I also want to point out that Feyre tells him she never believed that she could be happy until this moment. But then his throat bobs and he immediately pulls her in to kiss, and it was deep and thorough. You can absolutely read this as Tamlin being overcome with emotion and feeling the same way that she does. And you can also read it as Tamlin's throat bobs from nerves or fear or sadness because he knows that this is the last happy moment. But no matter what with Feyre and Amarantha, if she tells him she loves him, Amarantha's going to come after her. If she doesn't tell him she loves him, Amarantha's going to come after Tamlin and drag his entire court under the mountain. So his throat could be bobbing and he could be pulling her in for this passionate kiss because he's overcome with that nerve of, oh my God, this is our last moment together. I have to make the most of it.
I see what you're saying there. I'm going to have a slightly different take on that here in a few moments.
Oh, okay. I'm excited. Mm-hmm. I do know that one of my happiest moments, at least in my day-to-day life, is drinking my smoothie. If you've been watching on YouTube, I've been drinking. I'm about halfway through my morning smoothie already. I drink it almost every single episode. And some of my favorite morning smoothies have actually come from Daily Harvest.
When it comes to eating well, it can be such an annoying guessing game. Even if something is easy to prep and marketed as healthy, it can include a bunch of ingredients I'm trying to avoid. That's why I love Daily Harvest. They say no to gluten, fillers, seed oils, added sugars, and starches. So all I have to do is say yes to delicious, easy to prep smoothies. Plus, they have so many other meal options like harvest bowls, soup, pasta, overnight oats, flatbreads, and more.
Daily Harvest really takes the guesswork and the effort out of cooking because they deliver delicious smoothies like mine right here and other options that are built on organic fruits and vegetables, and they deliver it straight to my door. So I can get yummy smoothies and meals that are ready in minutes without the trouble of shopping, prepping, or heck, even cleanup. And when it comes to variety, Daily Harvest is always keeping it exciting, so I never get bored when it comes to meals and snacks.
For dinner tonight, my family is actually going to be making Daily Harvest white bean and spinach pesto dinner. I'm so excited. I haven't tried it yet, and I'm really excited, but their pastas are so good. Yeah, you've tried it?
I have. It's really good.
Oh, yes, and I have a feeling the kids will like it too.
Yes.
Take the guessing out of eating well and try Daily Harvest. For a limited time only, go to dailyharvest.com/FFG to get $30 off your first box plus free shipping. That's dailyharvest.com/FFG for $30 off your first box and free shipping. dailyharvest.com/FFG. So the next day after the summer solstice, we get, like you said, I believe this is our last scene here in the dining room, at least in book 1.
It's because there's no dining room left after this evening.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
And hold on, like this went way over my head the first read, but did Lucien get some on summer solstice? Because Farah asks where he was last night, and he says he was stuck on border patrol. Then Tamlin gives a pointed cough, causing Lucien to add, with some company. Who is Lucian's company?
I don't know, but Lucien can fuck, dude. Like, this is reason 10,000,006 as to why I am salivating for a Lucien POV and for a romance for him in a future ACOTAR book. Whether that's with Elaine or whether that's with, hell, even someone else.
Bassa.
Ooh.
I love shipping those two. Yeah. I don't really care who anybody ends up with. I just want them to be happy.
Honestly, so real. I want to see this fiery nature that apparently the Autumn Court men have in bed, and I want to see it written on a page. I want that POV.
Well, no matter who his company was, it sounds like he got laid, which is wonderful news because now he's back to being the third wheel with these two obvious lovebirds. Like Farah, she's all hot and bothered, feeling like her clothes are too scratchy as she and Tamlin eye fuck each other. And she's even thinking to herself that Tamlin could have her literally right there on this table. And then there's poor Lucien who's like, hello, I'm trying to eat. It sounds like he and Azriel have more in common than they realize.
Oh my, well, especially knowing that Fae can smell shift in feelings. Like he's there like eating his sandwich, like chicken salad, and Feyre's over there. She's like, he can have me right here on this table. And Lucian's like, hello, I'm eating my hangover meal and I don't want this wafting all up in my nose. Gross.
But then, and then hard left turn here. Lucien does offer some truly heartbreaking news. The Winter Court got word to Lucien that the Blight, aka Amarantha's forces, took out 24 children. Quote, it just burned through their magic, then broke apart their minds. Oof. Let's talk about some cold water splashing on us.
Ice water. Ice bucket challenge.
We will learn much later that she used a Damati to kill these children, making it seem to the other courts like it was Rhys. Lucien even notes that the other courts are getting hit hard, except, of course, the Night Court, and its dangers are moving farther and farther south. It's like Amarantha is vulturing around the Spring Court, waiting these final days for the curse's deadline before she swarms it and takes over.
It almost feels to me like she's antsy and nervous, and she's using these attacks as a way to feel like she's taking back control and distract herself, quite frankly.
Absolutely. I believe Rhys even says something along those lines, like when he's offering that POV in chapter 54.
Lucien also mentions this contact in the Winter Court, and I wonder if it's Vivian, because we do learn that she is one of the only ones in the higher-ups, I'll say, at least from our knowledge, from the Winter Court that was not under the mountain, and she is basically the HBIC. She is the head bitch in charge of the Winter Court. So I do wonder if that is his contact, or if it's someone maybe in her court. I don't know, but it's interesting to think about.
the timeline of events like the slaughter of Winter Court younglings under Amarantha's reign are a little confusing because there's multiple rebellions referenced throughout our story. So we're going to quickly walk through it. Also, don't worry, next episode's Suriel Teatime is all about Amarantha and her ruling. But until then, 40 years ago, about 9 years after everybody went under the mountain, the Winter Court, Day Court, and Summer Court rebelled against Amarantha's rule. She executed these 3 High Lords and most of their families. This is how Tarquin, Helion, and Callias became the new High Lords of their respective courts. The title was passed to them while under the mountain. Now, 40 years later, the Winter Court tried to rebel again, and to send a message, Amarantha wanted to assassinate Callias, High Lord of the Winter Court. Rhys convinced her not to kill him with his sway as her sex slave. He didn't know that instead of killing Callias, Amarantha ordered the slaughter of 24 Fae children of the Winter Court and sent a Damati to destroy their minds. Since Rhys was also a Damati, Callias believed it was him who had shattered their minds, so he was understandably pretty pissed off at Rhys for a while, which was assumably Amarantha's intention to create a wedge between these High Lords. It's not until later in the series that Rhys convinces Callias that this wasn't him and he didn't have anything to do with the slaughter. Presently, the Spring Court is the only court in Perinthia that is, quote, free, like major air quotes there, from under the mountain. We know that the High Lords who have cozied up to Amarantha have a little more freedom to come and go, like Rhysand, and I'm going to assume Baron just because he's an asshole. Not everyone in each of the courts is under the mountain, though. Vivian, like you were just mentioning, of the Winter Court, for instance, was on border duty when Amarantha secured her powerful hold over Prythian, and Vivian was able to hide in a small city in her court and use her powers to shield it from Amarantha. Seems safe to assume Vivian was not the only one in the courts who did something like this. It's also a little unclear where Amarantha found these 24 Winter Court children, since it doesn't seem to be here in the small city where Vivian is ruling over. So I'm going to speculate that while, yes, she took everyone from the party and the court raids under the mountain, she couldn't get every single inhabitant. And in turn, they formed refugee groups, for lack of a better word, which I'm sure she figured out where some of these were. And maybe she didn't try too hard to round everybody up in the beginning because, number one, it wasn't worth her efforts. Number two, she could use these free court members as leverage. Killing these children is a perfect example to keep Callias in line. And three, there probably wasn't even enough space under the mountain for every fairy in Prythian, which I will say she didn't really care about since the lesser fairies were trapped in the lower levels and left to fend for themselves.
I do wonder how the other High Lords viewed Tamlin and his, major air quotes, supposed freedom. Because, I mean, Tarquin, Helion, and Callias were all forming rebellions under the mountain. So you would imagine that they would be thinking, oh, Tamlin, he's probably rounding up some troops. He's probably figuring this out. He's probably figuring out a way to get us all free. And we'll talk about this in a minute when we get to Rhys's entrance into this delicious scene. He's not doing shit like that. He barely even did enough to save his own court. I cannot believe the High Lords even showed him an element of kindness, if I'm being honest. If I was one of them, I would be so pissed knowing that he wasn't doing anything to not only save his own court, but to save everyone else, given the freedoms, again, major air quotes, that he had that they didn't, and they were still doing shit. That's infuriating.
Yeah, if you think about it too long, it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's a real bad look.
Tamlin, bad look, dude.
Now, after this mini download of what's going on in the Winter Court, Tamlin shoots to his feet in alarm, and of course, we get a claw watch. He unsheathes his claws, canines elongating, and snarls at the open doorway. He is literally turning into a variation, or at least a high fae variation, of Man Bear Pig before our eyes. But this wording is really important, because many of our claw watches have been Tamlin losing control over his anger or his frustration, and his claws have shot out. There's that element of he didn't have control over it. But here, it does sound intentional, and that he's purposefully turning into his beast form to protect his beauty. And it makes sense. The man who killed his entire family and is warming the bed of his number one enemy just walked into his house. Now, he does rein his claws back in before Rhys comes into the room. He does sit down or even slouch in his chair and pick at his nails with a dagger, which is a very interesting form of nonchalantness. But this does read to me as if his first instinct was to kill, hurt, and protect, which sounds about right for our guy Timmy Tam. But once he thought strategically, getting Feyre safe, glamored behind Lucien, he thought better of it. And instead, he gets his baldric of knives, he slumps in his chair, like I said, and he picks his nails. He's seeping back into that, more casual high lordness, but he's using it in a more strategic way. He put his thinking cap on and he was like, oh, maybe it would actually be better if I didn't rip Rhysand apart when he first walked in the door. It's so fun though, because the beastness of Tamlin is so in complete contrast with when Rhys walks in. His steps are described as graceful and feline. Now, there is one really small note that I want to make, is because when Rhys is walking in, there's a scuff of a footstep. And my headcanon is that scuff is when he gets a scent of Feyre. He's almost not trips over himself, but he almost kind of scuffs his footsteps because everything else is extremely graceful. But as he's walking in, even though it's masked, he might get the little whiff and that causes the scuff of the step.
That's interesting. He does say that there was a familiar scent in there that he couldn't quite place. And because again, it was hidden by the glamour and all of that. And then the pieces all fell together once when he realized there was a third plate and that he was being glamored and all of that.
He even takes her goblet from the plate and picks it up and sniffs it. And I just imagine that being like, let me make sure this is her before I really lose my shit. I could see, but we're not there yet. Feyre thinks about how the house has gone completely silent, and she remarks, quote, not the pregnant silence of Fire Night. I love that SJM brings up Fire Night, a very important moment for Rhys and his character in the story, right before she brings him back into the story in a way that makes him sound like super bad guy villain mode.
And I love the tension of someone truly awful coming their way, who would want to hurt Feyre. It's insinuated that Rhys is one of these worse creatures than the Adder, worse than the Naga and the Suriel and the Bogey.
I love this though. Quote, his grin widened as he finished, and something in his countenance turned feral and deadly, more so than I'd ever seen Tamlin look. Feyre is already comparing Rhys and Tamlin up against each other. Now comparing them unknowingly, but this is just the beginning.
There is so much layered in this exchange with Rhys, and we're going to cover why there's so much tension between these two High Lords when we sip tea with the Suriel today. But it starts with him inclining his head slightly. Definitely not a bow, though, as Feyre notices. And then, bam! We finally get his name, Rhysand. As the most handsome High Lord smiles with heartbreaking beauty, he says that only his prisoners and enemies call him Rhysand. And while it's said as somewhat of a joke, we immediately recognize that how his name is said can be key in the speaker's perception of him. Not a guarantee by any means, but we're going to closely watch how Feyre uses his name both to herself and speaking to him, and how it reflects her perception of him throughout the series. Or at least the first few books, I guess.
Rhys begins to lay into Timmy Tam, and on a reread, it does hit a little different. Rhys remarks that Tamlin has been held up in this country estate for 49 years, and it must be a paradise compared to Under the Mountain. Quote, I'm surprised though, 49 years and no attempts to save yourself or your lands.
Then Tamlin concedes with a low voice that there's nothing to be done. Ugh. And that's when Rhys keeps going. What a pity that you must endure the brunt of it, Tamlin. And an even greater pity that you're so resigned to your fate. You might be stubborn, but this is pathetic.
Yeah. You must endure the brunt of it is such a backhanded slap, because Rhys is literally Amarantha's whore, and he is enduring the brunt of it in such an intimate way. And it just, oh man, there's a part of Rhys that is infuriated with Tamlin that he's at least appearing to not have fought or at least attempted to save his lands in the last 49 years. I want us to take a moment and put Rhys in Tamlin's shoes. He would have been scheming, plotting. He would have had at least 16 different plans ready to save the Spring Court. He would have fought until his last fucking breath. Like we said earlier, with the Day, Winter, and Summer Court High Lords all banding together and fighting under the mountain, Rhys would have been right there with them, and he would have had an army ready to roll. He is standing here right now, seeing Tamlin to appear to have every fucking luxury and freedom and not do a damn thing about it. I don't blame Rhys for how he's acting in this scene. I'm gonna say it. But again, this is all how it looks to Rhys. Tamlin did fight. He then stopped, and then he fought again.
In his own way.
He did the Tamlin fighting, which is half-assed. So he did send sentries out and condemn people to death. We cannot overlook the emotional stress and pressure that would put on a person. And in comparison to how Rhysand would have filled his situation, it is night and day. At least night and spring.
You really make such good points. And I mean, Rhys isn't far off from reality when you realize what the rest of the courts have been through compared to the Spring Court these past 49 years. When Lucien says that he's just Amarantha's whore, Rhys replies, quote, "Her whore I might be, but not without my reasons." He might be casual right here, but dang, this all weighs on him, and it's so perfect how it's right after he lays into Tamlin about not doing enough. Rhys is sleeping with his enemy because Tamlin won't. Just have to throw that out there. Tamlin won't sleep with her, so Rhys is. Obviously, there's more complexities to it, but basically. And he's doing this in order to protect his people. He's sacrificing everything for his lands, for his family, for his court of dreams, and being accused of doing nothing by people who he thinks are indeed doing nothing. I'd be pissed off too if I was Rhys.
So pissed. Don't blame Rhys in the slightest. Also, during Rhys's verbal takedown, Fae-vorite does remark about how his voice drops to a whisper, quote, "an erotic caress of sound that brought heat to my cheeks," later mentioning even how he has a lover's laugh. There's all this foreshadowing for her and his eventual mating. On a first read, you do read it as if it's sensual and lethal and deadly, like Lexi was mentioning in our Calamai episode. But Rhysand, baby, you're not done. After Lucien fights back, we just have to highlight, it is not Tamlin. It is Lucien who starts fighting back as Rhys is literally telling Tamlin he's been a lazy fuck. Rhys starts calling Lucien Little Lucien and mentioning how when he switched to Spring, his lovely mother was in perpetual mourning over losing Lucien. Now, pause, because this is wildly important here. Remember, Lady Autumn, because we don't have a name for her, so Lady Autumn, and Helian's affair went on for decades. And after Beren found out about this affair, she made the choice to stay in Autumn and she stopped the affair with Helian. It's assumed, however, that she stayed because Beren knew that Lucien was not his son and she feared what Beren would do to this favorite son of hers who was born from love, the only one who was born from love. So when Lucien leaves Spring, not only is her favorite child and youngest son leaving, but also the number one reason for her staying in this loveless, abusive marriage is leaving too. My heart breaks for Lady Autumn. God fucking damn it, I hope she gets the revenge arc of a century.
I'm also curious about what Lucien is referring to when he says to Rhys that he's been doing much more than bide time in the Spring Court. This brings us back to his plan B before Feyre entered our story, yeah? Like, he's got contacts in other courts when he's not supposed to. Of course he does. He's emissary and kind of a spy master. But we never get a whiff of anything he's actually planning, right? I'm trying to remember, but I don't think that we ever get an inkling of who it was with or what those plans might have been.
He literally just says, like, let's take a stand, and that's the amount of information we have on what his plan was to do, which honestly, it's better than doing nothing. That's all I'm gonna say. However, then Rhys asks if Tamlin is going to reprimand his lackey for speaking to a high lord of Prythian like that, which I mentioned this in ICD. Pause, because Feyre has an existential crisis at these words because she's like, another high lord I didn't know about? But Timitam says, quote, "I don't enforce rank in my court." The fuck you don't? Timitam is lying through his fucking teeth right now. But Rhys says, still? So this word is so interesting to me because does Tamlin only enforce rank when other courts aren't around? Or does everyone else just follow rank and Timitam doesn't enforce it necessarily? But I don't think that's true because he like whips his sentries and like threatens to kill him.
I'm leaning toward this being more of a discussion about Tamlin's weaknesses as a leader.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the balls to enforce in a true High Lord way, which may even be why he can be so jerky with Lucien sometimes as he battles him wanting to be his friend and how he should be as a lonesome High Lord who needs control. And also back when Tamlin did become High Lord, it was a really rough transition. So he wasn't ever planning on becoming High Lord. So he didn't learn the leadership skills and I'll say the enforcement skills that were necessary. And so when he took over, people didn't like him and they left. And he certainly did not enforce rank then. And I have a feeling, again, that rough transition includes him having to learn on the job how to become a High Lord. And that might be what Rhys is referring to here as well.
However, when, again, Lucian fights back to Rhys. Rhysand gets all up in Lucian's grill and says, quote, I was slaughtering on the battlefield before you were even born. Why, yes, he was, because he fought in the war 500 years ago. Now pause. Rhys is about 500, and he fought in the war 500 years ago.
Rhys is 535 right now. He was 28 when the war started, and he was 35 when the war ended because it lasted for 7 years.
All right, there you go.
But we learned that in last week's episode, Nicole, with the Suriel.
I'm so sorry. I did not apparently commit his age to memory. I'm so sorry. We do, however, get a glimpse into that warrior that Rhysand was at the war in the prologue chapter for ACOTAR. This is Rhys literally right after a battle in this very war, and he is all worried about Cassian and Azriel's whereabouts, and he's searching the Illyrian bloodshed, the Illyrian graveyard for his two best friends, which is so sad.
We don't know exactly how old Lucian is, but I'm guessing at most 300 years old. There are a few tiny little hints here and there, but it's a really wide range. So I'm just going to say around 300 years old. So we can determine Rhys is several hundred years older than Lucian. It's a pretty wide range there, but let's just throw in several hundred years there. And then we also know that Rhys is about 28 years older than Tamlin.
That's such a normal number, and I'm not going to lie, when I saw it in the outline, it jarred me. Like, I'm very surprised. I was like, oh. But just as fast as Rhys got all up in Lucian's face, he pulls back and puts his hands in his famous pockets. Ah, yes, these pockets that we will become so very familiar with this casual nonchalantness from Rhysand. But he then says to Lucian, who do you think taught Tamlin, quote, the finer aspects of swords and females, which... swords and females. That is perfect. If you know, you know.
Sheathing. There's swords. Nicole's got some words about the word sheathing.
I was going to say, we're going to go into sheathing later in this episode, so swords it is. However, I am just going to assume that either in the centuries, you know, after they were buddies, Tamlin forgot these lessons that Rhysand taught him, or he was just a terrible student, because we cannot forget, your hair is cleaned. Was his opening line, basically, after screaming at her and bursting into her house, man, bear, pig, Kool-Aid man style. Let's not forget that.
I think maybe the circumstances of the situation with Fae-vorite threw him off his game. But wow, where's the fan art for Rhys and Tamlin as young heirs just messing around? Like, that'd actually be kind of sad.
It would,
but
I'd
love to see that.
I don't know how I don't think they would be good friends. I know that they were buds, but like, I don't think they ever got past the surface level friendship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Rhys does at one point say that he took pity on him. And I do think that's more of like a mentor role as peers, you know?
And then Tamlin and his father killed his mother and sister. Good job, Tamlin. But all of that to say, Rhys is on it in this scene. He's sharp, he's quick-witted, and you know what? I bet that he is taking a multivitamin to give himself that extra support by filling in key nutrient gaps in his diet. I do think Fae-vorite might need one as well, which is specifically designed for women so she can keep up with her High Lord. And Fae-vorite, I've got the perfect option for you. It is called Ritual.
Listen, I'm not getting any younger and I'm not immortal. Yet. Maybe. Hopefully. So I need my multivitamins to support my brain and bone health, plus promote red blood cell formation. Both Nicole's and my Ritual Essential for Women 18 and over. Multivitamins are in the mail right now, and I'm so excited to start taking mine.
Personally, I love that I know exactly what I'm going to get from Ritual. Ritual's Essential for Women is USP verified, so you know that you can trust what you're putting in your body. Only about 1% of supplement brands on the market have the USP verified mark, which shows the product contains the ingredients actually listed on the label. Ritual multivitamins are vegan, non-GMO, project verified, gluten, and major allergen-free, certified B Corp, and made traceable. Whew!
And Ritual uses scientific tools to select lower carbon packaging, prioritize sustainably sourced ingredients, and set ambitious climate goals. We love that. Ritual is a female-founded B Corp. Also, we love that, meaning they are holding themselves accountable to not just their company's financial health, but also the health of people and our planet. They're making a difference in the lives of their customers like us and the environment.
No more shady business. Ritual's Essential for Women 18 and over is the multivitamin you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/FFG. Start Ritual or add Essential for Women 18 plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/FFG for 25% off. Thank you, Ritual. Now, Rhys, baby, he turns to leave. Yes, a sigh of relief goes through the room, but wait. He notices that there's a third chair and a meal laid out on the table. I guess they were really stressed out and caught off guard, quite frankly. So I don't think it's out of the question that these two Fae males totally forgot to remove the evidence of Feyre being there because they were so focused on go, get her glamored. It is surprising to me, however, that Rhys, who notices everything, did not catch this when he walked into the room. However, my guess is that he was a little eye on the prize and focusing more on enjoying laying into Tamlin. We even learned from chapter 54 that, quote, Amarantha sent me that day after the summer solstice because I'd been so successful at Calamai. I was prepared to mock him, maybe pick a fight. So Rhys is really like swaggering in, being like, let's fight Tamlin today. So I also do not blame him for not noticing the third plate until this very moment. But then, speaking of this very moment, quote, his brows rose. A flicker of excitement, perhaps even disbelief, flashed across his features. This is why we love a reread. That flicker of excitement and disbelief. Yes, because he realizes that's her scent in the room. Remember, he had no idea she was staying with Tamlin in the Spring Court. He also had every intention that he was never going to see her again after Calamai, and he thought he was only granted that gift of seeing her once as like a gift from the Cauldron. So this disbelief and excitement, it just gives me chills.
Because prior to his realization here in ACOTAR chapter 54, Rhys described Feyre's scent in the scene as familiar in the room, but hidden. And it comes together when he sees the plate and, like, again, all those pieces start falling into place.
This is also when he picks up her goblet and sniffs it. And it's just like,
yes,
oh my God.
That's right.
But then Lucien, he whirls on him, his face, meaning Rhys's face, contorting with rage. Yes, rage, because when in chapter 54, he says, quote, here you were, living in my second most enemy's house, dining with him, reeking of his scent, looking at him like you loved him. Oh, poor Rhysand, my baby. Then after Lucien tries to swoop in saying that Feyre is actually his fiance, Rhys starts taking some L's because he tells Lucien how he never thought that Lucien would dabble and stoop so low with mortal trash.
Oh boy.
Yeah, woof. This is about to be
oh boy.
Yeah. Brushes Lucien aside and like literally like a curtain, like moving the curtain drapes away. And he comes face to face with Feyre and tells her that if she was wise, she'd be running and screaming from these people. Yee.
Both Tamlin and Lucien stay where they are when Rhys, quote, with horrific gentleness, pries that knife from Feyre's hands. And oh my God, how he's like, oh, she doesn't know, does she? I assume he's referring to the curse and her key role in all of it. Or rather, Feyre doesn't know the dangers she is in with Amarantha, because if she did know, she would have run away and screamed so fast.
I think D, all of the above. I think he's referring to all of that. And then when Tamlin, still not making a move, he's just standing right there. He does get up. He does stand up. That's about it, though. He stands.
Oh, dear. Again, that bar is real low for her to be damn.
It's about to go even lower when we go under the mountain. He tells Rhys that he has seconds to get out. Rhys, however, takes control of Feyre's mind, making her body go completely taut. She feels that famous talon-tipped hands scrape against her mind and knows that with one move, he would kill her instantly.
I love this twisted magic and its descriptions on the page. I just love seeing magic shine through the pages, no matter what fantasy book we're reading. Quote, even my blood flowed where he willed it. Feyre is entirely at Rhys's mercy here, and not in the sexy way, folks.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
Thank God. Now, we do need to highlight that, yes, we do know later that he is trying to scare the absolute shit out of everyone in this room. But this is still Rhys taking an L nonetheless. Honestly, I need to take a moment and just say brava to Sarah J. Maas, because this guy who literally has her mind in his hands where he could kill her instantly and lets the room know it, is the one we all end up rooting for in the very end. Just so good. Rhys isn't done taking L's, though, because it's not going to be done for a while. Earlier in this podcast, we mentioned how Tamlin has a pattern of thinking poorly of humans. Obviously, it's the main reason Amarantha put the curse on him. And on several occasions, he even insults the human race when he's trying to give Feyre a compliment. Good job. And we do have to hold Rhysand to the same standard because he says, quote, "I've forgotten that human minds are as easy to shatter as eggshells." Oof.
Oh, Rhys, not a good look, my darling. Again, yes, hindsight is 2020, and we later understand he is putting out all the evil villain stops here to purposefully scare Feyre and push her to safety. But still, for a Fae who fought alongside humans, was prepared to die for their freedom, he is showing some of those same prejudices we've come to know so well from Tamlin and Lucien. And I mean, none of these guys have seen a human in a long time. So there is just that embedded inequality when they radiate so much power and strength.
But we're still not done. Rhys takes it one step further and reads Feyre's mind without permission. Oh boy, this is bad. This is real bad.
This is real bad.
Quote, "She has the most delicious thoughts about you, Tamlin. She's wondered about the feeling of your fingers on her thighs. Between them, too. I'm curious. Why did she wonder if it would feel good to have you bite her breast the same way you bit her neck?" Dude, not
oh, dear.
Cool. He is outright embarrassing her, violating her innermost privacy. Feyre and Tamlin, they have only kissed. We need to remember that. They have not, I mean, obviously they had the calamite, but Tamlin was on some freaky magic drugs for that. So we're going to just kind of brush aside that for a minute. This is not cool, Rhys. This is really not cool. Again, yes, he's trying to keep her safe. That is his ulterior motive here. And freaking the fuck out of everyone in this room is his way of doing so. He even admits that the reason he broke into her mind was to not only terrify Lucien and Tamlin, but to also scare the shit out of her, know how much danger she was in Prythian. But even with all that, this is still rough, buddy. This does, however, make me wonder, can Rhys see past thoughts? Because I highly doubt that Feyre is thinking about Timitam biting her boobies while the High Lord of the Night Court literally has complete control over her mind and body and blood.
You know we'll dissect that Damati powers soon enough. But that is a very good point. Okay, keep it together. That's not something Feyre is thinking at this moment. At least we think it's all safe to assume that's not what she's thinking. With these mind reading powers, it also works with memories and feelings, so it's not crazy for Rhys to type into his Google search, "What does she think about Tamlin?" and those feelings come up.
Did you just say the Google search again? Are we serious?
Yes, I
did. Shouts to
but not in the Suriel way, but in the fourth wing way. And he inwardly dies a little bit inside because it confirms Tamlin's scent is all over her from the summer solstice makeout session. Man, we really are just coming full circle with our fourth wing deep dive.
GFDD for life, baby.
GFDD for life.
He also notes that she would have been the one for Tamlin, and he might have gotten away with it, but she's more stubborn than him meaning Tamlin. I love that little dig of like, she's not the one for you, asshat. Like, I love that so much. And also, I don't know, Tamlin's pretty stubborn. I think Tamlin and Feyre are actually the same amount of stubborn, but Feyre is definitely much more Night Court stubborn, obviously. But Rhys also does know that she's falling in love with Tamlin and literally teases Tamlin with that information here, which I do think is one of the other reasons why Lucien is appalled isn't even a strong enough word here. He is aghast that Tamlin is sending her away just a few days before the curse is up. Right here, they are getting confirmation to know exactly how close they are. And Rhys is dangling that little carrot in front of them.
Exactly. Quote, "She would have been the one for you." It's literally Rhys saying, wow, this human really does love you. And Tamlin might have gotten away with breaking the curse. Except Rhys is secretly like, nope, if she breaks the curse, Amarantha will definitely kill her. I'm going to talk about this at length soon, and I know I have said this in the past as well, but Tamlin knows this, and he's so divided between having the opportunity of saving his court and breaking the curse and recognizing the risk on Feyre's life by exposing her to Amarantha.
But right before Rhys lets go of control of her, there's an interesting little word that SJM writes. Those talons lazily caress her mind. Caress is such a cool word choice here. It's almost as if he couldn't help but have that little moment of, I'm going to call it intimacy. I'll call it intimacy. Yeah. But then
In his way.
in his talent-tipped way where he has literal control over her entire body, and he's also reading her thoughts out loud. Good shit. Good shit.
We love you, Rhys, but you're not perfect. You are morally gray, and we can never forget that.
Oh, it gets more morally gray because the begging begins. This is the cherry on top of Rhysand's performance here. It's also not a little bit, it's a lot of bit of payback for Tamlin getting to live the way that he has for almost 50 years while Rhys has been in this unimaginable position. In chapter 54, Rhys mentions, quote, "I made Tamlin beg as Amarantha had made me beg." Oh, God.
This is really pitiful also on Tamlin's part. I'm just going to say it. It's one more contrast between these two High Lords. Amarantha may have made Rhys beg all these years, but he would never get on his knees like this for any reason except one that directly saves his lands. Wait, actually, I say that, but then I know that he would do it for Feyre too, which is what Tamlin is literally doing right here. So let me rephrase. He wouldn't beg in such a defeated and broken way like Tamlin is here. Rhys would maybe act the part again if he was in this exact same position, only if it directly helps his lands and woman while scheming in his mind to take his revenge later, while Tamlin is doing this in very much a defeated, you win kind of way.
100%. Because Rhys says beg, and Tamlin immediately drops to his knees and gets on the ground. And of course, Rhysand, ever the gentleman, makes Lucien do so too. This is, again, yes, another huge L for Rhys. But Rhys asks a very interesting question that I want us to talk about here. He asks Tamlin, who's on the ground, literally nose to Rhys's boots. He asks him the question, quote, "Are you doing this for your sake or for hers?" Do you think that Tamlin is begging to save Feyre's life in this moment, or is he begging for the salvation of the court? Basically, is he doing this because of the woman he loves, or is he doing this because he finally has the opportunity to do something, as pitiful as it might be, to save his court?
Definitely to save Feyre, because he also follows up with like, are you going to tell Amarantha? I don't think that he is thinking about his court in this situation. I'm going to have a lot to say about him and what he thinks about his court here soon. But I think that this all comes down to him saving and protecting Feyre. And if it means that he has to get on the ground and grovel that Rhys will not tell Amarantha, then of course he's going to do that. No questions asked.
You make a really good point about his immediate next question. Are you going to tell Amarantha? That's a Tamlin, son of a bitch. Tamlin, god damn it. Rhys then selfishly asks for Feyre's name. And when Feyre, unwilling to give her own name, knowing that, if she pauses for too long, he's going to rip it out of her mind. Also knowing that if she gives her real name, he would find her family, drag them to Prythian, which Ianthe and King of Hybern do the same thing in the end of Akameth, but that's getting ahead of myself. So Feyre instead gives him the name Claire Better, which begins the downfall of Claire. It's not funny.
We shouldn't be laughing.
She gets like Ramsay Bolton flayed open. Like, it's not cute.
Oh, it's bad. It's
bad.
really, like, when I read that, yeah, we'll get to that part here soon. But poor Claire. Woof. Anyway.
But Rhys asks this question not for Amarantha's gain. He asks it because he thinks himself so selfish and wanted so desperately to know the name of this human woman whose dreams he saw, even though he knew the name that she gave him was not true.
I have a question about this, because if he's doing this for himself, why does he still give Amarantha the wrong name? Because he knows that she's lying, and that is probably why he then gives it to Amarantha, because he knows that it's not her real name and he thinks that it's a made-up name. But why does he give it to Amarantha in the first place? Like, why does he say anything about there being a human girl here at all?
I don't know. Does she know I feel like she knew somehow. If she had, like, when Rhys came back, I feel like she knew. Because if she has a little bit of Rhys's power, that means she has a little bit of Demati power, right? So she would be able to break into Rhys's mind?
No, because she doesn't. Because remember, she doesn't actually have the High Lord's like powers herself. She's just like containing them.
That's right.
And it does make her like more powerful in general, but it's not leveraging their specific powers that she can then use.
So I don't know how Amarantha knew that there was a human girl. Maybe. Oh no, wait. Rhys does say that he thought she gave him a random name, like not even like a human name. So I think he offered it up to Amarantha to like stay in Amarantha's good graces because he knew it was like a nobody name, not knowing that it was actually the name of a person from her village.
So yes. But why would he give a name in the first place and share the information that there is indeed a human girl when he's trying to protect that human girl from Amarantha in the first place?
I don't know. We might have to debate this when we get closer because I feel like there's an explanation to it. I just don't remember it.
Okay. Just
I truly don't know because that is a very unlike Rhysand move to do. I don't know. Interesting. Rhys then turns away from Feyre and is completely unfazed because Tamlin, he's, down on the ground, he's groveling, and then he immediately stands up. And I love that moment where Rhys just like kind of pushes him back and he's like, not with a lady present. Like, Rhys is the king of one-liners and I love him so much for it. But he turns back to Feyre and then turns back to Tamlin. And Tamlin is right fucking in his face and like baring his teeth at his throat. I just imagine this so much and it just makes me chuckle. Just the thought of Rhys turning around and just being totally unfazed by Man Bear Pig literally being at his throat. And Rhys gives his final farewell of, well, this was entertaining, mentioning how it was the most fun he's had in ages, which I personally don't think is entirely a lie. He's finally seeing this mystery girl again and getting more insight to her. Maybe fun isn't the right word by any means, but he's definitely become a shell of himself within Under the Mountain in these past 50 years. Feyre is a huge part of what brought him out of that. So I do think that maybe while it's not fun, it definitely, probably entertaining is like the most entertainment he's had in 49 years for sure. But with an I'll give Amarantha your regards, he winnows away.
And then, it's so sad. We later learn in chapter 54 that as soon as he left, he vomited his guts up because he had to walk away from Feyre again.
Rhys, baby, we love you so much. We love you so much.
Really took even when L's. You take all these L's. Oh my God, you took a lot of L's here and you're not done yet in this book.
No, he's not. Later that night, this scene went totally over my head on first multiple reads, actually. Rhys vanishes. He winnows away. Tamlin orders Lucien and Feyre out of the dining room. He roars in fury, breaks apart the dining room and also some of the downstairs of the house. And Feyre's up in her room drinking hot chocolate, wondering if he's all right. How did I miss this? How did I miss this blatant red flag? It is as red as the book cover. There is a reason this book cover is red. It is as red as the book cover. That is how red this flag is.
Yep, all the seeds are just being planted for ACOMAF. We didn't touch on this during the Rhys scene, but that was the first time we finally hear the name Amarantha. So now Feyre knows the name of this terrifying she who rules over all these High Lords of Prythian. Feyre speculates how deadly she must be to keep even Rhys on a leash. Amarantha is still so abstract to Feyre that she can't even begin to fathom what she is going to go through in the near future under the mountain. The air of mystery around Amarantha continues, and I love how she's teased throughout this book, including now until the big owls reveal, and then, of course, when Feyre comes before Amarantha and we finally meet her face to face after so much buildup. She's the big mystery in the book, and learning her name was another big puzzle piece for us readers.
This is also such a small gripe, considering Tamlin just ripped apart half of the downstairs, including the famous dining room. But he enters Feyre's room. He just enters it. He does not knock to enter. And again, this is so small, but just entering, it's like whatever he has to say to her is far more important than any permission she would give him. It's so on brand for Tamlin.
His voice is also hoarse and empty, like he's been roaring a whole lot and having a full-blown temper tantrum downstairs where everyone let him be, because my guess is that this is not the first time Tamlin's gotten into one of his moods.
So Tamlin mentions how he's sorry, which good for you, Tamlin. He said sorry, good job. But Feyre immediately responds with, it's fine. And Tamlin immediately says it's not fine.
This is just the beginning of their inability to talk about hard things in the present. Sure, they've overcome barriers and can open up about their pasts and how they're healing their trauma together that we've talked about a lot. But if it's anything related to the present moment, to their current problems and issues, gone is that open communication. And this will be another big theme moving forward.
After he tells her it's not fine, he grabs her hands and, quote, wrenching my fingers from the sheets. And then his hand tightens on hers. This really rubbed me the wrong way. Did he do this to give her comfort or for his own comfort.
I thought of it as a way of him trying to reconnect with her and to soften the upcoming blow of him sending her to her family. Like, he's wanting to hold her hand right now when she's kind of withdrawing from him, and he's reaching out and being like, hold on, it's still us.
Feyre then yanks her own hand away because he tells her, like, I'm sending you away, and she yanks it away from him, disconnecting that connection that he was craving in the moment.
Yeah, well, she doesn't want to leave, and she's mad that he's making her leave, and she doesn't have any say in this.
She starts to ask questions, though. This, to me, is a little flag waving in the background. She starts to ask questions about the loophole and how the Suriel mentioned there was no other way, and he, quote, snarls. She just wants to understand, my guy. She's using her mind, not being the docile damsel in distress that she was at the beginning of this book, because she was a shell of herself, and he fucking snarls at her. He also keeps cutting her off. I'm not okay with Tamlin right now.
Nicole's going to have to do a serious 180 when we start covering something here soon.
You're going to talk for a minute about all of this, why he's sending her away, and I'm going to use that time to really center myself and get back into my smut love.
Let's go ahead and start that conversation about why Tamlin is sending Feyre away when there's still 3 days of opportunity for her to stay to say that she loves him back. On the surface, it seems like a really stupid decision. Like, oh my God, when I was first reading this, I was screaming at the book, as Lucien will also not so kindly point out. And while it is condemning his entire court for her safety, and it is thinking very short term, on a reread and after a lot of reflection, I can understand Tamlin's reasoning, even if I don't agree with it. First of all, as soon as Rhys realized that Feyre was there with Tamlin and they were going to break the curse, he set out to scare Tamlin and her into sending her back to the human lands to safety. So, yay, mission accomplished, Rhys. Good job. It goes to show how much danger Feyre really was in, because you'd think that Rhys would want Tamlin to break the curse and give them all a chance at freedom. As he reflects in chapter 54 of ACOTAR, his other great enemy, meaning Tamlin, had become the one loophole that might free them all. But neither of them can bear the thought of Amarantha getting her hands on Feyre, which she definitely would have the moment she learned of her existence right after the curse breaks. There's also the question about why did Tamlin go through all of this with sending his sentinels out to die, to courting Feyre and falling in love with her. You know, he's been trying to break the curse. So why do any of this if he was ultimately going to stop it from happening because, you know, of the danger it would put Feyre in? My best answer to this relates back to what we've already talked about with how torn Tamlin is. On the one hand, of course he wants to work toward breaking the curse and do what he can. On the other, it can have its own separate devastating consequences. And I think this fear of Amarantha coming after Feyre after the curse breaks, it was a little out of sight, out of mind previously. Being happy and falling in love, that's been at the forefront of his mind, even though he's been aware and nervous of the dangers to come. He's been thinking that, yes, there will be consequences of breaking the curse, but he's hopeful he can protect her and shield her from these dangers. But not until it's crunch time, not until Rhys comes and reminds him just how dangerous this is, that is when Tamlin realizes he's officially at the fork in the road. Does he keep Feyre here and risk her not saying that she loves him in the coming days, which would not break the curse? This would mean that when the deadline is up, Amarantha would come to his doorstep, only to see there is indeed a human woman here, and she'd learn how close Tamlin was to breaking that curse. We can imagine how delighted Amarantha would be to see Tamlin's real attempts and that she was right in the end. And then she would absolutely torture and kill Feyre, take the Spring Court under the mountain, and Prythian is doomed. Or does Tamlin keep Feyre here and she does say she loves him, which, yay, the curse would be broken, huzzah! Oh, wait. Amarantha would obviously find out and make it her life's mission to destroy Feyre for making a fool out of her. And it would be a very dangerous game of Tamlin and co. destroying Amarantha before she can get her hands on Feyre, or he naively thought he could protect her from Amarantha if the curse was broken. But Rhys's performance took any hope that Tamlin may have had of protecting Feyre from Amarantha, and he just crushed it. I personally am of the mind that Tamlin and Lucien should have been figuring out what happens when the curse breaks, so they're fully prepared for the wrath of Amarantha and at least have a shot of getting her before she can get Feyre. Maybe they did, or at least Lucien did, he would, but we don't hear any of that. No matter what, this would be a massive risk with Feyre's life if the curse breaks. The courts would be free of Amarantha, yes, but it would be a risk of how fast they can get rid of Amarantha or how well they can protect Feyre before Amarantha gets her hands on her and tortures her. No doubt making Tamlin watch if that was the case. Or, third option here, does Tamlin Tamlin go the safest route for Feyre and call this whole thing off by sending her back to the human lands where she'll stay quiet about what happened, be safe with her family, and overall it's far less likely for Amarantha's spies to track her down. Yes, it's definitely the coward's way out, and if I was in the Spring Court and knew he valued a human girl's life over all of Prythian, I would be a little bit pissed off. Of course, I don't want Feyre to die, and it's important to try to protect her, but this is Tamlin giving up on everything because he's scared of the risk. And yes, I am giving him a hard time with this, but I also need to remind myself Rhys made sure Feyre was sent to safety because he's also too scared of the risk it poses for Feyre. He also at least has the comfort that his real court and chosen family are safe, which is something none of the other High Lords have. Just gotta say that too. Feyre obviously doesn't like being sent home, not when she's worked so hard for the Spring Court to become her new home. She inquires how long she has to stay away, and it's an unspoken lie when Tamlin says, not forever, when she presses. But he knows that he'll be under the mountain for who knows how long, probably the rest of his life, which is immortal, so that's a very long time. And again, he knows that he is condemning himself and his court by protecting her here.
While you've been talking, I've been getting ready to talk about the sexy time. And while we don't get this confirmed, I'm assuming it's been a while for our dude Timitam. And it might be helpful for him to, get a little checkup, make sure his 300, 500 plus year old self is in tip top shape to keep up with Feyre. Sounds like Tamlin could use a doctor.
Enter ZocDoc, the place where you can find and book doctors who will make you feel comfortable and actually listen to you. And we're not talking about a few. We're talking about tens of thousands of doctors, all with verified patient reviews, so you can make sure the vibes are vibing before you ever meet in real life. It's actually how my family found our new doctors when we moved to Colorado and got new insurance.
ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you, and you can also instantly book appointments with them online. Once you find the doctor you want, you can book with them immediately. No more waiting on hold with the receptionist listening to that music over and over and over again. All of these doctors have verified reviews from actual real patients.
We're talking about booking appointments among tens of thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed, credible doctors and specialists. You can filter specifically for ones who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat basically any condition you're searching for. And best of all, the typical wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between only 24 and 72 hours. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments.
Fantasy Fangirls love ZocDoc, and we think you will too. Go to ZocDoc.com/FF and download the ZocDoc app for free. And then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/FF. ZocDoc.com/FF. We move into sexy time. So looking ahead at sex scenes that we get in future books, this one seems like child's play in comparison.
I made an annotation how this is just as tame as it gets, which is good, because if you're a new Fantasy Fangirl listener, this is a nice warm up for us. It's good to get to know each other with our bangity bang deep dive before we get to the real stuff and become real close friends.
Chapter 55, that's all I'm gonna say. We get an entire chapter next full bang session.
Or if you're really curious, go check out our Fourth Wing and Iron Flame deep dives.
Oh, good times.
Good times. Good times.
I do want to point out, though, I know I said I was going to be on Timmy Tam's side, but I think I need a minute. So I do want to point out, however, the famous power dynamic we've talked about throughout this entire podcast. With these two, it actually flips on its head for this because Feyre is the one who initiates and, at least at the beginning, takes charge. She pushes him down. She climbs on top of him. She makes out with him. Go girl. This is her taking some power back in this situation when literally her world has just shot into upheaval. I also think that she maybe thinks a little bit, if I fuck him real good, if I do real good work here, then maybe I can stay.
Yep, that checks out.
But to be fair, it's only a short amount of time before Tamlin growls and flips her on her back so that he is back in the dominant seat. Claw Watch is back in session. Timitam, with one long claw, shreds open her underwear, and this is the Claw Watch we love to see. Also, when they are totally naked, she remarks how his claws are out, but they are devastatingly gentle on her hips before he goes to town on her downstairs. The vast majority of our claw watches have been from a place of anger or loss of control. This doesn't feel that way at all. Maybe from sadness that he knows he's losing her, but instead it feels just like, as Feyre says, quote, a beast freed from its tether. His orgasm is also described as him roaring. I feel like this claw watch here is the most primal version we get of Tamlin, and it's completely come out to play. Speaking of which, I've got a feeling that Tamlin would be really into roleplay in his beast form, but I don't know if I want to go down that road too much.
Well, hold on. I would like to point out again that he has the power to turn into anyone. I'm not talking about animals. I'm talking about people. All I'm saying is there could be some real roleplay fun with a shapeshifter.
I don't think Tamlin's that exciting in the bedroom, though. I think he's a little more vanilla, just with a beast twist. He's vanilla ice cream with like a caramel swirl, but the caramel swirl is just beast.
It's the store brand version, not the good Tillamook kind.
Now, I said this in our fourth wing coverage, and I will say it again. While I don't mind this one as much, I don't love it in sex scenes, at least for the first time, where the guy is like, if I keep going, I won't be able to stop or whatever. It's like, she is literally throwing herself at you. She just got naked and quite literally bent a leg to show off her hoo-ha for you even more, sir. I need you to read the room, Tamlin. I do wonder if this is a way to really drive home in books that consent is on the page. If that's the case, I am all for it. I do think that that's very important, but I just don't love it. It's like, read the room, my guy. Lexi, there's one sentence that I would be doing a disservice as the hopeless romantic on this podcast if I didn't call it out. And that sentence is, quote, he sheathed himself inside of me. What are your thoughts, Lex? Hot, not hot?
It's descriptive. There's all sorts of different ways of saying it. There's penetrate, which I would say maybe I'm leaning a little bit more towards this one. And then there's, the thrust. We get all sorts of good language. And I can't think of anything but a sword. And I don't want a sword anywhere near my hoo-ha.
Ouchie. Ouchie.
But it is descriptive because, hey, like I'm making my hand motions right here. I should really stop.
And this is why this podcast is rated R. I do think, yes, it is descriptive. I also think it is very in alignment of what we've seen from Tamlin in that warrior form. Like, before Calamai, he is shirtless. He is got a bow strung to his back. He's just got his baldric. Like, he is a warrior in looks, in the way he acts, yes, but is he a warrior in nature? We've discussed that on the podcast. That's not for right now, but it feels very in alignment with this like masculine energy of like he sheathed himself as, himself inside of me. Sometimes I have to remember that you're my sister and I'm like, this might be weird.
I don't think there's anything that's weird between us. We have posed together with vibrators. And posted it to the internet too.
Great fucking point.
And then my father-in-law called them medallions.
When I told mom and dad that we were going to be doing that, they just laughed. They did not respond with words. They just laughed. And I was like, aren't you proud of us, guys? Anyway, this word right here does feel very in alignment with the like masculine warrior that we've seen from Tamlin. Now, after these two do the horizontal hanky-panky again, Tamlin and Feyre start to fall asleep. Now, I also want to point out that they fell asleep, they woke up, they did it again, and then they went back to sleep, or they're falling back asleep. And Tamlin tells Feyre that he loves her, quote, thorns and all. Many people in the fandom have this question after this scene. Do you think he actually loves Feyre? And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Lex.
Yes, I definitely think that Tamlin loves Feyre. There's a but attached to that, though. But he loves her as much as he is capable of. Not in a, he's bad and not capable of love kind of way. But Tamlin has so many issues and doesn't dig deep within himself or others to do the hard work. And I believe that extends to his capability of love. He can't quite dig deeper with that love in the way true love really means that we come to understand with Feyre and Rhysand. I think he is also starved for this kind of love and attention, and it's healing for him too. We've talked so much about their healing journey here together, and I really do think that falling in love together has played a huge role in that. It makes them both have these rose-colored glasses on, refusing to take them off and truly see the other for all that they are. Tamlin says he loves her thorns and all. Fae-vorite describes what she means by this thorns and all, saying thorny, prickly, sour, contrary. Not even when she refers to her thorns is she capturing the depth and complexity of what thorns and all really means. Tamlin is saying, yes, he loves her even with her attitude, but it's like he loves her despite who she can be at her core, not because of who she is at her core, in the way that she and Rhys will connect and love. Last thing I'll note, I really do think he loves her as deeply as he can, because we got to remember, he's proving right here that he's willing to put her safety over that of everyone in his court and Prythian. Cannot emphasize that enough. He wouldn't condemn himself, his court, and his people if he didn't love Fae-vorite with all he has.
I think he loves the surface level survivor, damsel in distress Fae-vorite. He loves the idea of her, but like you said, not who she is at her core. So I disagree with the I love you thorns and all statement. I think he thinks he's seen the thorns with her survivor mode, with who she was at the beginning of the Spring Court, like you were saying, but he hasn't seen and accepted the thorns truly, and she will be living in her thorns next book. He will literally have to feign being asleep so that he does not have to talk about those with her. Now, in Tamlin's defense, he is in his own thorns too, at least at the beginning of ACOMAF. I'm highlighting that specifically. However, we will talk about that at length then. I do think that they are in the convenient love stage that you are right before you break up with a boyfriend. Like, it's the I love you, but more because we were in love, but it's more convenient to stay together right now, all that kind of stuff.
You're talking about in ACOMAF, not right now,
I'm talking about in ACOMAF, yes. I think right here he loves the idea of who he thinks Fae-vorite is, which is that damsel in distress, that survivor, that surface level version of Fae-vorite that he has gotten to know over the past few months. I do have another question for you, Lex. Because she wakes up the next morning at like dawn and homeboy is gone. What are your thoughts here?
I find it very in character for Tamlin.
That's a shame.
That's a shame. But really, I bet it was torturous for him to lay there with her, knowing that he was sending her away and that by doing so, he is definitely condemning his court to Under the Mountain. Have I mentioned that yet? And with all of that going through your mind, it'd be distracting from snuggle time. I will give him that. But I think it goes back to our speculation about his depth of love. Sure, can't blame him for not being able to lay still with the world crashing down and time ticking. But also, if he was all in, he would have stayed there wrapped up in Fae-vorite's body and her scent, savoring every last possible morsel of a moment together and pushing out the bad thoughts, not letting those overrule him. You know that's what Rhys would do. Again, always having to compare the two of them. You know that that's what he would do. He would not waste a second of time with her. And Tamlin was too much in his own thoughts, and he left because that was better for him.
Tamlin doing something selfishly that's not better for her too. Wow, shocking. Now, Alice, when she is saying goodbye to Fae-vorite, it's, oh God, this line kills me. Alice says, make the most of your freedom. And I seriously got teary-eyed working on this part of the outline. Alice knows that they're about to go under the mountain in a matter of days. She knows that her freedom, or at least any scraps left of it, is about to be shattered under Amarantha's control. So her saying to Fae-vorite, make the most of your freedom, is her not living vicariously through her, but it's reminding her of, you lucky, you're so much luckier than you know. Not in a bad way, but just in a reminding you way.
I also love how the word freedom in this book has so many layers to it, depending on who is saying it. Alice also probably knows she won't get to see her nephews again like Fae-vorite wishes. And it's so fitting that in response to Fae-vorite saying something along the lines of, I hope you can see your nephews again soon, that in response, Alice says to Fae-vorite that about making the most of her freedom. Luckily, we'll later learn Alice is a smart cookie who was able to stay out of Amarantha's clutches when she took the Spring Court under the mountain. But she doesn't know this yet. She's probably under the assumption she's doomed right now. Lucien, understandably, and so in character for him, makes fun of Fae-vorite's ridiculous clothes. We have to talk about these for a second. She's dressing to look like she just came back from visiting the family's very wealthy aunt. And in other words, it's like grandma dressed you up. That's like all I can think of. Also, I love how Fae-vorite hates how impractical these clothes are. Sure, our girl appreciates classy and subtle extravagance, but this is the opposite of what she would ever want to be in. It represents how her free spirit doesn't fit in the human world, and what she's wearing embodies how uncomfortable, impractical, and ill-fitting it is for her to go back.
I also want to point out that this is not the last time that Feyre will be dressed up in something that she absolutely hates, and that will also be on her wedding day. Woof. Lucien says to Feyre that he thought she was smarter than this. This is wildly unfair from my guy Lucien. He and Tamlin have not told her anything, basically anything. They've said the blight and all this kind of stuff, but the moments where she's learned the most have actually been from Alice's onboarding, the Suriel, and Rhys crashing lunch yesterday, aka outside resources. And it's still been minimal info.
I agree. And Lucien knows that she can be fiercely independent when she wants to be. Lucien may not know how much Feyre really tried, but of course Tamlin wouldn't hear any of it, which is the exact same as what he probably did with Lucien. His mind is made up, and that's that. But I also think Lucien's saying that she's smarter than this may refer to all of them knowing that she loves him, but she won't say it. And he's commenting on her stubbornness. But more so, he's probably angry that she's going along with being sent away when she doesn't want to be because, of course, how much she loves him.
I also think he's like, when you're really mad at someone and you just say whatever it is because you're so pissed, and I think he's in one of those moods. Yeah, you and I know what that's like. We definitely. Lucien then goes to fight Tamlin on letting Feyre go, and then Tamlin dismisses Lucien, which it's not that surprising, but it's still shitty.
Lucien says, "You're not even going to give her a few more days, just a few, before you send her back to that human cesspit?" First of all, human cesspit? Oh, Lucien, come on, man. He must not know about the gorgeously wealthy manor they now have, or he just calls the human realm as a whole a cesspit. But wow, so much emphasis on a few more days. And for good reason. The curse deadline is literally 3 days after this. 3 days! 3 days! That might not seem like much time, but given how far Feyre and Tamlin have come in their love story, that's enough time to have a very real chance of the curse breaking. And Lucien's like, dude, we're so close. Come on.
I don't blame Lucien is rightfully so pissed off. And Lucien even spits on the ground as Tamlin dismisses them, which you don't do with a High Lord, but Lucien is just that mad. There's that fiery temper that we get from the Autumn Court. I love it. We do need to talk about why Feyre did not say I love you back to Tamlin. Feyre has never been in love before, at least as far as we know, and we can strongly assume, and has a very complicated relationship with love to begin with. Not to mention, Feyre is not vulnerable outside of her painting studio, at least, and saying I love you is one of the most incredibly vulnerable things that you can do. But she also explains here that in the end, she would grow old and die, while Tamlin will remain immortal. End quote. Oh, this kills me. I would not become a burden to him. At the end of the day, in Feyre's eyes, those you love, those are the people you take care of. Her family was, for lack of a better term, a burden for her when they were in poverty, but she loved them and took care of them anyway. That is still how she sees and views love.
I will also add that throughout Feyre's time in the Spring Court, Tamlin made her feel like a burden, both when he was standoffish earlier on and when he was trying to protect her. Tamlin did kind of dig his own grave here with letting her think she's a burden, ultimately contributing to her inability to express she loves him. Remember too, way back in episode 1 when we discussed how during her goodbyes with her family, there were no I love yous. Expressing love is not in the Archeron family's vocabulary. Yes, of course, Feyre loves her family despite how complicated that is, but she also has never experienced how love can be expressed and openly, publicly felt and shared. Tamlin has absolutely helped her heal and learn how to feel love in a new way. Those statements of love aren't part of goodbyes as we saw firsthand in chapter 4. Does Feyre love Tamlin? Absolutely. But thinking and feeling it are very different from saying it for her based on all she's ever known about love, which really isn't much.
I don't blame Feyre. I think I said this during our Fourth Ring coverage. I wait sometimes months to say I love you to a partner even after realizing it, because I am so stubborn and I don't like being vulnerable. And you say it like right away, right? You're a unicorn.
I'm definitely, oh yeah, I definitely say it early on.
I love that for you. What's that like? Great. But of course, hindsight is 20/20. And if she had said it right then and there, she would have broken the curse. And maybe that's why Timmy Tam does a last-ditch effort and says it to her as he closes the door on her carriage and she starts to trot away. He's like, I love you.
I definitely agree. And as much as I went on earlier about how Tamlin is doing this to protect her, whether or not the curse breaks, he is absolutely giving her several last chances to say, I love you. Timmy Tam is giving me whiplash as I try to explain his actions here for sending her away and then trying to break the curse. Again, our guy is torn and indecisive. It's not my fault as I'm trying to explain this. He both wants the curse broken, why he's repeatedly telling her he loves her, and doesn't want it broken so she can stay safe, hence why he's sending her away. Again, when you explain all of it, it makes sense, but it's really confusing in the moment. I also believe he's telling her he loves her again and again because he wants her to know, truly deeply know, how much he means it before they never see each other again. When Tamlin says he loves her, he is telling her he is choosing her over his whole court. Have I mentioned that he is condemning his whole court? I am so mad at him still. When I first read this, even before knowing anything about the curse, I was screaming at Fae-vorite to tell him how she felt. Like, seriously, I had the text receipts to prove it when I was angrily texting Nicole about how stupid she is for not saying she loved him too. And again, I had no idea the repercussions of her not saying it either in that moment. I struggled with understanding why she wasn't saying that she loved him.
This is so interesting because I was like, yeah, of course she doesn't say it. Like, it did not even faze me when I first read this the first time.
And I think this goes back to how different you and I are, because you don't say you love someone for a while and I am like, yep, my heart's on my sleeve.
Oh, I love that. You Hufflepuff, you. It's so sweet.
Fae-vorite thinks to herself, quote, I should say it. I should say those words, but they got stuck in my throat because of what he had to face, because he might not find me again despite his promise, because beneath it all, he was an immortal and I would grow old and die. Nicole talked about how much weight her feeling like a burden carries and its association with taking care of those you love. But I also want to point out that when Fae-vorite becomes an immortal too, that love she feels right now fizzles out. It's ironic that part of why she can't say she loves him now, despite loving him so much, will end up being part of the reason she falls out of love with him. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to it, but you get the idea about the shift in her perspective of Tamlin once she becomes an immortal too. It's hard to leave the magic of Prythian, even for such a short time, because fantasy holds such a dear place in Nicole's and my hearts. It's literally our job to talk about these amazing stories. But even though deep diving fantasy literature has become our dream careers, it's more important than ever for us to find ways to wind down with our favorite genre in a way that makes us fall in love with it all over again and enjoy fantasy for a whole other, very relaxing way.
Anomaly is a new role-playing meditation podcast that takes you into a world of magic and fantasy. You'll be invited to imagine yourself in scenarios such as learning to cast tranquility spells or exploring a land once vanquished by a dragon with 4 legs. That's how I picture it in my relaxing mind, at least. But it's all connected by a shared mythology. I've listened to every one of the episodes so far, and it's amazing. I feel so immersed in this world. I feel like I'm part of it. It's so relaxing. I'm obsessed.
The first campaign is an introduction to the world of Anomaly, its lands, its magic, and secrets. In the 8 chapters, you will imagine yourself in a different world, hear a story unfold, and along the way learn potions, chants, and enchantments that will help you both in this fantasy world and in your own reality. I love listening to Anomaly while falling asleep. The meditation is so calming, and it really helps me unwind from my crazy day.
Look for Anomaly on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's Anomaly spelled with an I-E at the end, not a Y. Go to SeekAnomaly, SeekAnomalie.com. That's SeekAnomaly.com to find out more. So Fae-vorite's carriage starts to trot off and she's heading back to the human lands, and the tang of magic starts to fill her nostrils and she falls asleep. I know the reason is, so she doesn't know her way back and forth from the Spring Court, but can we stop drugging Fae-vorite, please?
While I absolutely agree with you, I will say that I personally would not mind being knocked out for a 2-day road trip. Imagine how uncomfortable she's been for 2 days in this dress and this getup, which, wait a second. the magic probably prevented her from peeing, right? Like, she didn't piss herself in that dress.
Maybe Alice put a diaper on her before.
Oh, maybe.
All those skirts, you know?
We see such a stark difference in Feyre, just the way she describes the humans. She's been in Prythian for approximately 6 months and is a whole new person, coming to a whole new life of her families. But she first notices the servants and how utterly human they are, how restless they are. Just like me, like I get so restless. You all can see that on YouTube. She thinks they're, quote, unfinished, graceless creatures of earth and blood. Wow,
okay,
Farrah.
Jesus.
She thinks this about humans after living in Prythian for only 6-ish months. She is still a human herself, and she thinks this way. No wonder the High Lords and Fae hold their prejudices against humans. It's still not cool, don't get me wrong, but Feyre's already looking down on them too after only 6 months, and she still is a human. She knows she belongs in Prythian. That's her new world, and it doesn't feel right to her to be around humans again when she's known so much more than what we regular humans experience. Maybe I'm just hung up on this because I don't want to be a human and I want to be a Fae with a High Lord, but that's neither here nor there.
Elaine and Nesta come, sprawling out of the manor, and they do not recognize Feyre at first. They even go as far to call her lady and welcome her to their home. Why do you think her sisters don't recognize Feyre? I mean, obviously, yes, she's changed so much internally, but not that much externally, other than she's no longer, in survival mode and the things that come with it.
I am respectfully going to disagree because she's come into her own during her time in the Spring Court, and Feyre's had several moments in recent weeks where she looks at herself in the mirror and starts to like the reflection she sees back. She has become fuller, healthier, and happier, and she learned how to smile and laugh and love while she was away, and that fundamentally changes you as a person for the better. She had been a shell of a person before, focused only on survival and taking care of her family, and yes, a few tumbles with Mr. Isaac, but that was because of how lonely she felt. It was only a physical escape. Her sisters don't recognize her because she is not the same person, not really. And I love how much that drastically shows in her physical appearance too. You do just change that much, and it is absolutely going to reflect in your physical appearance.
Interesting. I originally thought that it was because of the glamour, some lingering glamour on them, but that doesn't necessarily make sense because Nesta fought the glamour, and so she wouldn't have called her lady. Okay, you make good points. Yeah, I'll accept yours as canon. Good.
And then, speaking of Nesta, we immediately get a cool and cunning Nesta. She's back because remember, she knows there was no glamour and this is all a lie. She sees right through everything. Quote, she left you her fortune, Nesta stated flatly. It wasn't a question. This is Nesta's confirmation that Feyre is going to play along with the story too. But Nesta's also understandably a little wary, asking why Feyre is being so quiet. Nesta's on her guard because she knows all of this is a lie and probably knows that Feyre knows this too. Then we get the full download from Elaine's perspective. So sweet, Elaine. Almost a week after Feyre was taken away by Tamlin to go care for their long-lost wealthy Aunt Ripley, a stranger appeared at their door. He asked for their father to invest in his money, and it was an offer so good and so insistent that their father couldn't refuse. This stranger gave them a trunk of gold just for agreeing, which, like Nicole said, heck yeah, for that sign-on bonus. Within a month, their father doubled the man's investment and money started pouring in. Then, hey, surprise, all those ships they lost were found with all their father's profits. Obviously, this was all Tamlin's doing. I have so many questions about how this magic worked, though. He didn't actually get those ships back, did he? Was it just the profits from these ships and he had it glamored to make it seem like that's where the profits came from? Is that not a decent amount of power that would use up some of his strength, especially going through the wall? I imagine Tamlin had, just a lot of money to give them and had to figure out different ways of money laundering it to get it actually to them. The stranger, of course, who showed up at their house was obviously a glamored fairy, or even a fairy shapeshifted into a human, because we have to remember he can do that, or should be able to do that. Maybe not when he's not at full power, but anyway. But bringing the ships back would have definitely been the trickier part of all of this. Anyway, I think it's one of those things that you just have to chalk up to magic.
I can only hear that in the Charlie the Unicorn, magic, Charlie, Candy Mountain, Charlie.
I don't know why I think of SpongeBob with that. I think
absolutely.
It's actually him doing imagination, but I just think of it as magic.
It is imagination. I can confirm. I watched that episode very recently.
We're going to save most of our discussion about Feyre returning to her family and what Tamlin did for them next episode, but I just need to point out this line and sympathize with Feyre. Quote, I wasn't certain whether I should be furious or relieved that they'd gotten on so well without me. Feyre spent weeks, maybe even months worrying about her family, knowing that yes, they were taken care of, but she didn't know what that entailed because Tamlin didn't tell her. And there was that little bit of smugness too when she was taken away, thinking that at least they'll now know how vital she was to their survival. But hey, turns out that was not the case with all this great fortune overflowing. I would personally feel the exact same way as Feyre right now. Be relieved that they're more than okay, yes, but also furious that they never had the chance to miss me or know how important I was to their survival for so many years. They never had the chance to miss or even need Feyre.
I would miss you if you were taken away. I would miss you a lot.
Thank you. I would go after you.
Really?
Yes.
I would go after you too. I hope you know that. I'd take Jake with me.
You're a Gryffindor.
Jake with Gryffindor power.
Get the 2 Gryffindors in my life.
Gryffindors and Capricorns, look out.
I'd probably take Megan.
Brett. I don't know. Brett would survive the woods. Brett, no, Brett would survive the woods longer than any of us, though. So, oh, we love everyone.
But the moment I break a rule, oh my God.
Love him and his little rule followers.
We do. We love him so much.
Oh my God. This chapter ends with, quote, but I couldn't fight the sensation, like a darkening shadow within me, that I made a very, very big mistake in leaving. She even remembers the Suriel saying, stay with the High Lord. But that word, a darkening shadow within me, is not there on accident. Hello, mating bond at work. This is really just highlighting the wrongness, not because she's leaving Prythian and the man that she loves and, you know, the Suriel stay with the High Lord, but she's getting farther away from her mate. And that is why there's that big old wrongness within her.
Whew. We were in the Cauldron there for a long time, considering how short these chapters were, and there really wasn't a whole lot to them, but
Lord help us in the next 3 episodes.
While we already highlighted so many key foreshadowing moments, let's turn our full focus onto foreshadowing to the rest of this book and other important moments in the series.
Feyre mentions that how on summer solstice in the human lands, they don't have anything religious attached to it. But next year, she will have quite the religious experience with the summer solstice in the Spring Court service. It is also interesting to note that Feyre thinks about how the children of the blessed might wander into the celebration for the humans and start to convert people on summer solstice. Again, another tie into Ianthe, religious, conversion, leadership of the children of the blessed. I'm convinced that is canon in my head now.
As Feyre is getting ready, she runs her hands over her curves and notes how she never thought she would feel anything but bone and muscle. This is such a beautiful moment for Feyre and the true embodiment of her shedding the survivor in her for someone who is healthy both mentally and physically. Sadly, though, under the mountain, she will lose those beautiful curves, but with the help from the Night Court friends, she will come back better than ever.
As Feyre is happy dancing with Tamlin, we get a quote. He was the only object in it, tethering me to sanity, to my body, which glowed and burned in every place he touched. Later in ACOTAR chapter 55, Feyre will literally glow for the High Lord of Night because he makes her so happy.
Feyre wonders if being emissary also means being spy master. While Lucien does a little bit of this, we will meet the spy master, Azriel, next book.
Feyre says in her inner monologue that she would never have the nerve to paint the night man. Nightman!
Man cometh! The day man. Oh, fighter of the night man, champion of the sun. I'll stop. I know the whole song, though.
I thought you'd be proud of me for that little Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I'm really proud of you.
Now, Feyre will not have the nerve to paint him, specifically his eyes in the cabin, later on in ACOTAR, but she will eventually paint her mate and display that painting in the river house.
Never forget all the nude Rhys sketches either, baby.
I would never forget Rhys's paint me like one of your French girls moment ever. God, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Me either. Rhys says to Tamlin about his present from the garden, but a nice reminder of the fun days, wasn't it? We'll learn much later that he's referring to his mother and sister's heads getting sent down the river and delivered to an Illyrian camp, aka a message to him and his father.
Oh, I did not put that 2 and 2 together.
Feyre is worried that if she gives her family name, Rhys will go find her family and drag them into Prythian to torment. While it's not Rhys who does do this with the name that was given, All I gotta say again is poor Claire.
Feyre says to Alice, quote, I don't like goodbyes. If I could, I would just walk out and say nothing. While she does not walk out per se, she does leave the Spring Court in a similar manner twice. My girl. Lucien says to Feyre, quote, those clothes are enough to convince me I never want to enter the human realm. Oh, but you will, good sir, and by doing so, you will play a critical role in bringing Vassa and Papa Archeron to the battle in ACOTAR. Also, LOL, your mate is in the human realm.
Feyre mentions how Nesta is made different and how, quote, she was as different from the humans around us as I had become. Not only as a human is Nesta different, being able to see through the glamour, but she'll also be quite different as a High Fae, being able to have a very unique power and the ability to wield objects that should be impossible.
Last but not least, Elaine mentions how they sent letters to Feyre about all the good fortune that they were getting. And Feyre thinks, quote, she didn't remember, or maybe she'd actually never known then that I wouldn't have been able to read them anyway. It is true that both Nesta and Elaine do not know that Feyre is illiterate. Now it is time for some Suriel Teatime. Every episode, Lexi is going to sip some tea with the Suriel and walk us through a world-building topic to help us better understand this world and the people in it.
Today's Tea Time with the Suriel will help us understand why there is such bad blood between Tamlin and Rhysand as we discuss the tragic backstory between these two High Lords. Because can you believe that before either of these High Fae were High Lords of their respective courts, they were actually friends? Rhysand, eldest child and only son of the High Lord of the Night Court, is approximately 28 years older than Tamlin, who is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Spring Court. Rhys was 28 years old when he fought in the war 500 years ago, and the war lasted 7 years, making Rhys 35 years old when it ended. During the war, Rhys battled side by side with humans and fought for their freedom. Tamlin, as you recall from last episode's Suriel Teatime, was a young boy during the war. Rhys confirms Tamlin was born when the war started, and then Tamlin explains he was too young to fully comprehend the ins and outs of what was happening, but he was observant enough to see and remember what was going on around him. So let's say that when the war ended, Tamlin was 7 years old, which means Rhys is about 28 years older than Tamlin. After the war, and once Tamlin matured, these two High Lord sons became friends over the years of attending various court functions. Rhys recognized Tamlin as a decent male for a High Lord son, especially compared to his awful brothers and the Autumn Court sons. Remember that Tamlin didn't want the Spring High Lordship title, but he also couldn't hide how much more powerful he was than his older brothers, so it was inevitable that he would someday become High Lord. Plus, with Rhys as a half-Fae, half-Illyrian who had to prove himself and defend his power, he understood what Tamlin went through and extended a helping hand. Rhys sought Tamlin out outside of courtly requirements and war camps and taught Tamlin some Illyrian techniques. He later reflects that maybe his help was actually out of pity. Rhys's family disapproved of this friendship, but Tamlin's father was threatened by it and their powers. He was weaker than both Tamlin and Rhys and wanted to prove to the world that he wasn't. So one day, Rhys's mother and sister were going to travel to the Illyrian war camp to visit Rhys. He was supposed to meet them halfway, but decided to stay back because he was busy training a new unit. Let's pause our story here to briefly introduce Rhys's mother and sister. His mother had been an Illyrian seamstress, and the mating bond snapped into place with his father when he arrived at the war camp just in time to save her from getting her wings clipped. While the High Lord of the Night Court was cold and calculating, Rhys's mother was soft and fiery and beloved by everyone she met. Rhys loved her fiercely, to put it simply. We don't know much about Rhys's sister, not her name or age or much of anything. We can speculate that she was fairly young. I'm just going to say at most a teenager, but that's totally just my own speculation. So anyway, Rhys had shared with Tamlin that his mother and sister were going to meet him in the Illyrian wilderness, and Tamlin, for some reason or another, told his father this. And Tamlin's father decided this would be an excellent opportunity to prove his strength against Rhys and the Night Court. Because remember, he was threatened by Rhys's power and his friendship with his son, and he was also probably a little peeved that the Night Court helped free mortals that he wanted to keep as slaves. So the High Lord of the Spring Court brought his 3 sons, yes, including Tamlin, to where Rhys had told Tamlin he was going to be, where he was going to meet his mother and sister in the Illyrian wilderness. But remember, Rhys didn't end up meeting them there as planned, so his sister and mother were all alone. The High Lord of the Spring Court and his sons murdered Rhys's mother and sister, the High Lord of the Night Court's mate and young daughter. That's bad. That's really bad here, folks. And it only gets worse. The High Lord of the Spring Court then sent their heads in boxes down the river to the nearest camp, and Tamlin's father kept their wings as trophies pinned to the wall of his study. When Rhys and his father learned of their family's slaughter, they winnowed to the edge of the Spring Court and went straight for the manor. Rhys held Tamlin's two brothers' minds and rendered them helpless while he cut them into pieces before he melted their brains inside their skulls. In other words, Rhys killed them. Meanwhile, his father went after the High Lord of the Spring Court and slew both him and Tamlin's mother, who Rhys's father had promised not to harm because they agreed they were not the kind of males who would do that, unlike the Spring Court guys. Rhys's father then headed towards Tamlin's room to kill him last, but Rhys tried to stop him because he was done with all this death. He was done with all this killing. He just wanted to go home. Tamlin opened the door to find Rhys and Rhys's father and quickly realized from the scent of blood that they had just killed his family. So he immediately killed Rhys's father in one blow, leaving these two High Lord sons staring at each other as the magic of High Lordship transferred to each of them right then and there. Then Rhys bolted on out of the Spring Court, and there has been a deep hatred between these two High Lords ever since. Kind of makes a lot of sense once you really hear the story, right? Now, I will say this, despite their mutual hatred, Tamlin has always carried a lot of pain and guilt about what happened with Rhys's sister and mother. After he became High Lord, he had their wings burnt.
Shit. Well, time to move on to favorite moments.
Sometimes there's not an easy transition, unlike with our ads.
Woof. So Tamlin tells Feyre that she looks lovely. And quote, something in his voice made me want to purr. Lexi already said this earlier, but it's worth highlighting again for us Fantasy Fangirl fans because purr, indeed.
I know we already talked about this at length, but I don't care. We have to say it again. Tamlin playing the fiddle and these two being so happy together. It is just so sweet and special for them to experience this before everything goes to shit.
Yeah. I love that in this last dining room scene, they are dining at a much reduced table after Feyre had made that mention last episode. Feyre is already leaving her mark on the Spring Court in many ways, and this is one of the good ways she leaves that mark on the Spring Court. We will get there eventually. Rhysand, king of one-liners. I want to point out one in particular because I think it's my favorite. In response to Tamlin telling Rhysand that they were in the middle of lunch, Rhysand purrs, stimulating. I love him. I also love this because of truly what it means to Fantasy Fangirls. Right before they have sex, Tamlin tells Feyre that she can't hold her own against this, Amarantha chick, and he grabs her face with two hands just to intensify his meaning.
Two hands!
If someone grabbed my face with two hands and is like, you can't hold your own, I'd be like, bitch, watch me try. Like, that would just make me want to try it even more. Maybe I'm a lot more like Feyre than I thought.
Speaking of, when they're about to bang, and Feyre is clearly not afraid of this High Lord, this embodiment of power, she thinks how she could, quote, trust him, trust herself to weather that mighty power. Tamlin's power is nothing compared to Rhys. That's not a dig, that's just a fact.
A little bit of a dig.
But anyway, and again, I have to point out how much Tamlin is the bridge toward her true mate. She has to learn how to trust the smaller power before she rides the almighty power.
And ride it she will multiple times. All right, friends. Sex jokes aside, that's it. We're done.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And next episode, we will be covering chapters 29 through 34. Buckle up, friends. We're going to be in the human realm, and then we're going to meet Amarantha.
Oh dear. Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We truly don't know what we would do without you.
And like we mentioned at the very top of the episode, if you're interested in joining the Patreon party, please do so at the link in our show notes or patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. Aside from Patreon, you can also get more Fantasy Fangirls content delivered straight to your inbox. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, we're actually going to be sending out our March email here really soon, so make sure you don't miss it. We have a calendar, we have a trivia question, we have what Nicole and I are currently up to, we have a roundup of fantasy books, we have a small business shout out. There's so much in these newsletters, and make sure you get those delivered to your inbox by signing up with the link in our show notes. And of course, another way to get more Fantasy Fangirls content, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. If you're not already, what are you doing? Just get over there and give us a follow. You need it.
We're fun, we promise. Please do not forget to also rate and review the show. It takes 2 seconds to hit that 5-star button. And if you want to write a little love note in that review section, it is so helpful for getting us up the charts and helping more people find the show. Side note, this is also really awesome to do with any podcast that you listen to. It is the easiest way you can support your favorite podcasters. But if you do not listen to the podcast and you instead watch the podcast, do not forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And last but not least, most importantly, share this with your fellow ACOTAR friends. If you also fell in love with Tamlin when he sheathed himself inside of... I should not have looked at you.
I just almost spit out my drink.
I'm so sorry. I should not have looked at you when I did that. Let me finish my sentence. Sheathed himself inside of Feyre. Then go ahead and share this episode with that friend of yours. We all have one. Goodbye.
Right, we gotta stop this episode. Bye, everyone. We
love you so much. Bye.
Hey.
We just totally lost it.
Oh, God.
And if you but this is no frat party jungle juice. To the view of the will of the wisps. The will of the...
Look at that wisps in there.
Rhysand, later.
Into Eden hallucination witchberries. I cannot say that line. Or wow.
What the hell happened to my voice today? There we go.
Oh, bad boy.
Hold me, fat boy. Jesus Christ. Was it me saying the word please?
And having a full-blown and having a full-blown... I should know this. My children have these all the time.
Speaking of which, Timmy Now, after they do the... Did I seriously write this?
Yes, you did. And I love it so much.
Ooh, I need to breathe for a second.
I'm ready.
Lexi's like prepared.